Chapter 1, Skyfall System. The library will come back soon after reading a book. Remember to call your further back too. After all, the family will be on holiday today. Everyone should have dinner on time. No problem. Mother took over the school bag, and Ryan waved at the blonde middle-aged woman standing at the door, and then walked along the sidewalk to the nearby library. The sky is very blue, with a few white clouds floating. Because it is a holiday, many neighbors take advantage of good weather to take care of the lawn or sit in the sun in front of the door. Ryan greeted the neighbors as he walked. Looking at all this in front of him, Ryan sighed silently in his heart. It has been through a whole decade. When he arrived at the library and greeted Mr. Manager, Ryan soon saw Mr. Lambert Liang, his adoptive father, who was writing on the table in the reading room on the second floor of the library. Middle-aged man, a writer who has written popular novels for several regional bestsellers. Ryan was adopted, and the adoptive parents told him that fact in the year of primary school. Of course, this is also impossible. After all, a white-faced couple can't give birth to a pure Asian child anyway. For Ryan, after being inexplicably smashed through by a meteor in his previous life, he found himself shrunk into a one-year-old baby body and came to a foreign country. It was already a great luck to meet a pair of adoptive parents who regarded him as his own, and to have exactly the same surname as his previous life. 10 years of nurturing has been enough for Lane to recognize them as his parents. Greeted his adoptive father and conveyed the instructions of his adoptive mother. Ryan sat in an empty seat to preview the middle school textbooks. After all, it has the soul of an adult. With the learning foundation of previous college students, Lane has always been at the top of elementary school. It seems that there is nothing to be proud of. According to normal development, he should finish junior high school in a good private middle school, and then be admitted to a top 10 good university in the UK. As an ordinary person, even if there are 2 lifetimes, there is an undergraduate diploma in the previous life, but it is estimated that the top universities such as Oxford and Cambridge are also unpromising. These are the routes that Ryan has planned for himself a week after being adopted and after knowing all the circumstances. Of course, after going to high school, you can slowly use your future information to make money. If everything goes well, then after graduation, you can basically live a good life that envied the financial freedom before the 30-year-old envy of the previous life. Just as Ryan worked hard to study junior high school textbooks in the library and struggled for the future, there was a bang in his mind. The system is activated. Wager grocery store is opening. Ding dong. The system was started for the first time, and the plain channel opened smoothly. Ding dong. Novice task generation is completed. Please receive. What's going on? Question mark. Ryan's movements immediately froze, which was supposed to be a life of urban rebirth, and the changes in the world in the past 10 years have also developed as memorized. Why did a system pop up suddenly? As an ordinary college graduate little white-collar worker in the past life, I also read a lot of novels. Naturally, I know this common protagonist. But that was just a novel. After crossing, he could have a complete family and a glorious future within reach. Ryan already felt lucky, so he didn't think this kind of golden finger would fall on his head. But now, the golden finger really came. Am I the legendary protagonist? Lane silently vomited. After confirming that a system really popped up in his mind, Ryan, who had the soul of an adult, quickly calmed down and began to look at everything in the system. The body of this system is the last remnant crystal after the death of the crystal wall system. As a result, when it moved across the crystal wall system, it hit the Ryan of the previous life, that is, the meteor, and then took him to this world together. Received Ryan flesh after a series of influences on the soul and the world. It became a system. Because the energy consumption of driving through was too high, the system has been sleeping, until 10 years later, the system that has absorbed enough energy is finally activated. Unfortunately, this system is not as intelligent as the system in the previous life novels, let alone chatting. Now the system only has a personal properties panel and a taskbar for the rest of the time. Has to admit that the system has a minimalist style of modernism, and all contents can be seen at a glance. Is it just the task above? Is this really an 11-year-old kid? I saw on the taskbar, miscellaneous shop task opening. Content. Since it is a store, the first task is naturally to complete a transaction. Hint, of course, there is a world of grocery stores, so of course you have to deal with the world, so please be prepared to traverse. And now the novice free plane world provided is a Plant vs. Zombie. Rewards. Wonji grocery store officially opened. Seems to be a very common task of traversing aliens in novels. But the question is, Ryan's body is only 11 years old. Can he really complete the task of going to Otherworld trade? The world of Plants vs. Zombies is not a peaceful world. However, now that you have a golden finger, it is definitely the best way to turn a blind eye. Fortunately, this system gave Ryan 24 hours of preparation time. Ryan decided to do some preparations and wait until his parents fell asleep at night to do tasks, so as not to suddenly disappear and make trouble. At this time, Ryan was not in a mood to read textbooks anymore, so he found a few books about survival in the wild and began to browse. Although this temporary act of holding Buddha feet may be useless, it is better than doing nothing, is it? At noon, Lambert called Ryan home together. On the way home, Lambert asked, how come you suddenly read a book like Survival in the Wild today? I think learning is a bit tiring, so I want to change my mind. It's interesting to survive in the wild. Lane replied like this, you read books www.uukanzu.com. It's good. Learning is not a good thing in life. It just happens that I have a brand new set of camping equipment. Tomorrow your birthday, I will find it out to give you as a birthday gift later. Of course, I have prepared gift. At this time, the two had reached the door of the house. Lambert said as he opened the door, Daddy, when did you buy these? Why haven't I seen our family camping? Well, that's because your father likes to stay at home. I used to vow to say that I could camp together with my family. I bought everything. As a result, I always said that I had something to do when I went out. I didn't camp for the last time. Put it in the backyard storage room to eat. The adoptive mother, Mrs. Sally, came out of the kitchen with a plate, speaking to the two people who had just entered the door while swinging the plate. Now, you should go wash your hands and start to eat right away. After having a sumptuous lunch, Ryan and his adoptive father went to the backyard storage room to find out the camping equipment, and arrange the storage room. By the way, today's holiday. You two should also do some housework. No problem, wife. Mum. Lean also took advantage of the free time in the afternoon to pick out the whole set of equipment that might be used and put it in his school bag. In the evening, after his parents fell asleep, Ryan secretly went downstairs to the kitchen and packed a few boxes of quick frozen tacos in the refrigerator with Legama hot sauce and packed them into a school bag. After that, he returned to the bedroom and ordered the task. I saw a blue light flash, and Ryan disappeared from the bedroom. The adoptive parents at the other end of the corridor slept deeply, and did not find his son disappeared. In fact, the entire community fell asleep in the moonlight, and no one saw it. An owl dropped a parchment letter into the Lane mailbox. Chapter 2, counted as a smooth first transaction. After a blue light flashed, Ryan appeared on the street of a small town with a school bag on his back. There were no people on the street and no zombies. Lane looked at the town curiously, and various debris were placed on the road as barricades. In the middle of the town at the end of the road, you can clearly see a house with a yard, and there seems to be someone moving inside. After checking the system, Ryan quickly knew that the house was the destination. In this case, Ryan took a deep breath, took out the engineer's shovel from his bag and held it in his hand, and walked towards the house with his legs. There are a lot of roadblocks on the road, but it is obviously aimed at the zombies who are going straight. As an 11-year-old child, Lane easily passed through the gaps in the roadblock and continued to advance towards the house in the center of the town. Near the barricade and even on the barricade, there were many zombies with separated heads. It seems that fighting has erupted here before. Fortunately, there are not many zombies that are scattered and not blocking the road. It only took a while for Ryan to get around them. Just about 10 meters away from Ryan's destination, he found that the gap between the two roadblocks of the last obstacle in front was blocked by a fallen zombie, while the other places seemed to go a long way. Lane was just about to move forward to remove the zombie, and suddenly found that although the zombie only had the upper half, his head was still there. In the game, zombies can only count if they turn their heads back. I think there is cold sweat behind Ryan. Fortunately, he was not cautious to move forward. The half zombies probably did not move and the second half, so stay here and wait for the rabbit. If you move up hurriedly, maybe your mind will become a breakfast of zombies. Since he felt something was wrong, Ryan naturally had to be prepared. Fortunately, he had all the things he needed in his bag. He poured the windproof lighter oil on the bandage, and then he found a long wooden stake with a fork in front to wrap it up. After ignited, in the end he thrust the torch directly on the zombie's head. Sure enough, the zombie was prepared to stand by and wait for the rabbit after being seriously injured. The zombies started to grab with his arms and tried to attack the person who injured him with the torch. However, after leaning his head with a forked long wooden stick, Lion inserted the other end diagonally on the ground to form a solid triangle. It is obvious that this half-legged zombie with no legs has no ability to get rid of the flame and hurt Lion. As time goes by, the flame gradually becomes smaller, and the amplitude of the zombie's swinging arm becomes smaller and smaller. Finally the flames disappeared and the zombies stopped moving. Lane stabbed the zombie's head with a stick, and his head fell off suddenly, and then the whole body turned into black ashes. Ryan jumped in this situation, only to realize that the zombies burned in the game would be ashes. This should be regarded as the first blame to kill, Ryan thought. Unfortunately the system is not a monster upgrade class. Zombies left nothing but a pile of ash. Walked through the barricade, Ryan finally stood in front of the destination door. He raised his hand and rang the doorbell. He heard a sound from inside the house, as if a person stumbled and knocked down a lot of things. The door opened, and a middle-aged man with an iron bot on his head stood at the door holding a baseball bat. Does the zombie press the doorbell? Where is it? Come out soon. Sir, I am human, and you need to look down. The man looked down at Ryan, and Ryan also found that the man's eyes were different in size, revealing a mentally abnormal taste. This should be the plant cultivation scientist in the game, Crazy Dave. Come in quickly, boy. The zombies have been hiding in secret to eat our brains. Dave reached out and pulled Lane into the door, then closed the door. I should have thought of humans long ago. After all, if there are zombies knocking on the door, my baby plants will not react unresponsively. Right. After Dave led Ryan to the living room and sat down, he began to ask, now the outside situation should not be suitable for a child to travel alone. Why are you showing up at my door? Lane is not very comfortable with this straight style. After thinking, he decided to tell the truth. I am a store owner, I heard that you have magical plants here, so I want to trade with you. Although the reason sounds unreasonable, Dave's plants tell Dave that you are telling the truth. Dave, sitting on the sofa, replied while loosening the sunflower in a flower pot. However, my things are incredibly expensive. What do you use to buy things from me? Ryan reached into her bag and took out the tacos and hot sauce. I think these foods may be what you need, because I think this kind of bad situation should make it difficult for people to see some industrial processed foods. And I might go to many places in the future and meet many people, maybe I can find some. There is no plant in this world, we can help each other in the future. Dave grabbed the tacos and enchiladas quickly. Gosh, enchiladas, enchiladas. I haven't seen them in a long time, since the zombies surrounded the town. Reading books www.uukanzu.com. Unfortunately these are it fully meets my requirements, but it is better than the pea puree every day. Okay, boy. Dave put down the items and looked at Ryan. I admit that your goods make me a little touched, but you can only change these 3 kinds of basic plants for these things. This is a discount that I think you are the first outsider in such a long time and your future cooperation. Yes, otherwise I will only give you a plant. Then thank you, Uncle Dave. Ryan looked at the list of plants given by Dave and said, I'm fine, please give me sunflowers, pea shooters and sunshine mushrooms. After listening to Ryan's request, Dave took out 3 bags and a key and handed it to Ryan, saying, you are a smart man, knowing that no matter how big the garden is, you must start with the most basic plants. The key is from the neighbor's house. He did not listen to my advice and was eaten by the zombies. You can come over from the next time, so you don't have to run so many routes. Ryan just took these things, and the sound of the system came from his mind. Ding dong, owner, you have completed the first transaction task. Obtain a miniature planting base, a yard of a neighbor's house, and provide up to 10 plants of 3 kinds each week. Free connection to the world of Plants vs. Zombies. The shuttle point of this world has been fixed. Dave's neighbors can now return. Ryan and Dave greeted each other, walked from the back door of Dave's yard to the yard next door, and then chose to return. Dave saw Ryan that disappeared after the blue light flashed through the door crack, and said in his mouth, sure enough, Dave now has a unique customer. Maybe the hope of ending the war with the zombie is on him. Okay, well, Dave should go to prepare lunch. There are fresh tacos today, which is great. Chapter 3, Grocery Store opened and Owl letter. A flash of light flashed over, and Ryan found that he did not return to the bedroom, but appeared in a room with a surface of about 20 square meters. Shelves were on 3 walls. The shelves were empty, only on the shelf facing the door. There are 3 potted plants in the palm of your hand. This should be the goods you just bought. In addition to the shelves, there is only a light on the top of the house, and the counter and chair in the center of the house. Ryan walked to the door and opened the door, and found that there was a gray mist outside the door. I just wanted to go out and saw that there was an invisible barrier on the door and I couldn't get out at all. At this time, a piece of information was poured into Ryan's mind. This is the Wonji grocery store. The goods will be placed on the shelves. The goods produced by the owner can be used at will, such as the plants that multiply every week. But if you want to use the goods traded by the guests, you must pay the corresponding price. Every time you travel to another world, you will start or return from here. When a guest or mission arrives, Ryan will be reminded to let him enter the shop. Otherwise, as long as he is not in combat, Ryan can enter the shop. At present, the only world that can be visited is the world of Plants vs. Zombies, and every 10 days can be filled with the energy required for round trips. Now, he can leave here at any time to return to the real world. After reading this information, Ryan chose to leave the grocery store. After flashing, Ryan returned to his bedroom. Looking at the alarm clock on the table, I obviously tossed 5 or 6 hours in the world of Plants vs. Zombies. But now the alarm clock shows only 1 hour left. It seems that the time flow rate of the mission world and the main world are different, but this is also good, so that people will not disappear and it is difficult to explain. Since it was still a long time before dawn, Ryan went to bed after cleaning up. In his dream, he dreamed that he had obtained countless wealth and strength from the grocery store, opened up the passage to his hometown, and then passed the salted fish. Happy life. Alright, when Ryan dreamed of sunbathing on the Hawaiian beach with his parents and the whole family, the alarm rang. Ryan recalled yesterday's dream, sighed, and then got up to wash in the bathroom. When went out, Ryan found that 3 or 4 gift boxes were placed in the corridor beside the door. This should be his birthday present. Turn over the greeting card above, which says, Happy birthday to our son. Ryan grinned happily, moved them into the room, and then went down the stairs to the first floor. After going downstairs, Mrs. Sally had already prepared breakfast, and Mr. Lambert was slowly coming down the stairs, when the postman's car bell rang at the door. Ryan, Go get the letter. I think this month's supermarket discount poster might arrive," Sally shouted in the kitchen. Ryan put on her shoes and opened the door, and came to the mailbox next to the lawn in front of the door. Open the mailbox. There are 4 letters in it. One is a poster of discount merchandise at a nearby supermarket, one is a letter sent to the Further by a certain publisher-editor, and one is a postcard sent to her by a mother's colleague traveling in Thailand. The last one is a letter to Lane. When Ryan saw the letter, his pupils suddenly enlarged, because the envelope of the letter was made of rare parchment, without stamps, and it was written in verdant ink. London, Greenwich, 12 Quebec Street. The small bedroom on the 2nd floor was received by Mr. Liang. Turn the envelope with a trembling hand. There is a wax seal on the back of the envelope and a coat of arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger and snakes around the capital H letter. Although many things have been forgotten in the past 10 years, he never forgot his favorite novel Harry Potter in childhood. It is obvious that this letter came from Hogwarts. As for the possibility of pranks, this is 1991, Rowling's novel has not yet been written. How could someone use this prank? As for not discovering that he is a wizard before, Ryan thinks it is probably because the body is an adult soul and can control emotions well. So there is no magic riot caused by the out-of-control emotions of most little wizards. Originally, after getting the system yesterday, Ryan also planned to make a fortune by relying on the system, and finally tried to find a way home. As a result, I received a letter of acceptance from Hogwarts today, and another mysterious door opened to Lane. He felt that the major events that happened over the past 2 days one after another seemed to have met the accidents of his life. It seems that this world is not an ordinary world as it has thought in the past 10 years. But a world with magic. Went back to the house and gave the other letters to his parents, absent-mindedly having breakfast. Ryan went back to his house and opened the wax seal with a knife. Sure enough, there was the familiar letter. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Principal, Albus Dumbledore. President of the International Federation of Magic. President of the Wizards Association. First-class magician of Merlin Jazz. Dear Mr. Lane, we are happy to inform you that you have been approved to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Attached is a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to begin on September 1st. We will be waiting for your owl to bring your reply before July 31st. Vice Principal, female. Milwa McGonagall is also accompanied by a book appendix table and a list of new items. Ryan took the letter back to the living room. His father was sitting on the sofa watching TV, and his mother was watching the supermarket discount merchandise poster. Seeing Ryan walking into the living room with a disassembled letter, Mr. Lambert, looking away from the TV screen, asked, "What's the matter, my dear? Does a girl write to you?" "No, it's not," Ryan replied, and then handed the letter to Mr. Lambert. "Just received a strange admission letter." Lambert and Sally took the letter. 5 minutes later. "Isn't this a prank?" Mr. Lambert asked with a shocked expression. "It is true that things like magic do not sound true." Mrs. Sally also followed. Ryan just wanted to say something, and the doorbell rang suddenly. "Are there any guests?" Mr. Lambert stood up and went out to open the door. Stood by a red-haired middle-aged man with a little baldness, wearing a suit that was 20 years old. "Hello, are you the guardian of Ryan Liang?" The other party spoke enthusiastically. "Hello, I am his father. Is there anything?" Mr. Lambert asked. "Arthur Weasley, a ministry staff member, came for your son's academic questions." The man replied. "You are reading www.uukanzu.com. Okay, please come in soon." Mr. Lambert let go and asked Arthur to come in, and then asked, "Issue to ask, which school do you want my child to go to?" "Hogwarts." Arthur said, "I graduated from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." Mrs. Sally heard this sentence and said in surprise, "Is the School of Magic real?" "Of course it is true. Hogwarts is the best magic school in Europe. Every magical wizard in Britain basically has to go there to go to school." Mr. Lambert looked down at Ryan and asked in Chinese, "Do you think you want to go to this school?" Lynn replied, "Since I am considered to have magic power, it is necessary to go there to learn and master the ability. After all, it is very dangerous to use it without power." After the father and son finished speaking, Mr. Lambert turned to Arthur and said, "I decided to send my child to Hogwarts to go to school, but where is the diagonal lane mentioned in the letter?" "Diagon alley can pass from the backyard of the Broken Cauldron Bar." After Arthur waved his wand, a line of text appeared on the white paper on the table. 26 Charing Cross Street, London. This is the location of the Broken Cauldron Bar. Take your children. He can see here. Then he suddenly thought of something. Arthur pulled out a ticket from his pocket and said, "This is going to Hogwarts. Please don't lose your train ticket after receiving it. The platform is at the middle pillar of the 9th and 10th platforms. When you go early, you can see other wizards who want to go to school. When you ask, you know how to get in." After speaking, Arthur waved goodbye to the 3 people, and then walked out of the door to a bush and waved at them. With a sound of firecrackers, they disappeared on the lawn in front of the door. It seems that not everyone has the treatment that the savior accompanies the purchase, Ryan thought. Chapter 4, Diagon Alley and Unexpected Acquaintances. After breakfast the next day, Mr. Lambert took Lane to take the subway to Charing Cross Street, which was only about half an hour away from their home. On the road, Ryan kept thinking about the world of Harry Potter. In the novel, the magic world is not the kind of high magic world where demigods are as many as dogs, lich walks everywhere, and transcendents dominate. But from some perspectives, the transcendent side of the world is not that simple. For example, in the realm of life, there are magic stones that can live forever. A time converter that can be used by a little girl in the time domain. In the field of space, the space expansion spell and teleportation popularized by adult wizards. There are even lucky potions that may affect cause and effect and fate. These things, especially some curses about the popularization of space and mind, can be said to be hundreds of years ahead of the technology side of this world. The magic of this world is probably not as simple as imagined. After all, Rowling wrote a fairy tale, just a part of the wizarding world. As for the combat effectiveness of a wizard, even the little dwarf Peter, who is considered a crappy wizard, can blow up half a street. This only shows that the wizarding world is not capable of combat, but that many things related to combat have been deleted from school education, and this knowledge can only be passed on through the family. Thinking of Ryan's relief here. He had a grocery store in the world. He should be able to make up for the shortcomings of ordinary people who lacked some knowledge. After all, he went to school in the same year as the Savior. It will certainly not be stable in a few years. It seems that the previous life plan needs to be changed. Now the main goal is to improve strength. After all, the magic world is still the strength. Otherwise, why is Dumbledore the leader of the wizards instead of Fudge? Was thinking, and suddenly Mr. Lambert walked in front and stopped. Here it is. Here is number 24 Charing Cross Street. Number 28. Why there is no number 26? Lean looked up and saw in front of him an old and dilapidated bar, with a wooden sign on it that reads Broken Kettle Bar, in the middle of a record store and a bookstore. Dad, hold my hand. Ryan took his father and pushed open the door of the bar. This is amazing. Mr. Lambert sighed looking at the room in front of him. This is a medieval-style bar. It doesn't look very tidy. The lights are a bit dim. Some people in robes are drinking or playing dice. Maybe they were standing at the door for a long time. A man with almost naked hair and the appearance of deflated walnuts appeared quietly in front of them. I am Tom, the owner of the Broken Cauldron Bar. It seems that you need help. After looking at it, I looked at Ryan. Is the first Hogwarts freshman coming? Yes, Ryan said. We have never been exposed to magic before. How do I get to Diagon Alley? I need to buy something for school. The boss Tom gave an ugly smile. Diagonal Lane, come with me. After that, he brought Ryan and his son to the backyard. Tom took out his wand and pointed it at the back wall. Count 3 pieces on the trash can and count 2 pieces horizontally. Knock 3 times. As Tom struck, the wall shook and began to move, and finally a wide archway appeared, leading to a winding, invisible, cobblestone paved street. You better go to Gilling Pavilion first. Just go straight and see the tallest white building where you can change the wizard's currency. After that, Tom put away his wand and left. The father and son walked down the cobblestone street towards the Gilling Pavilion. Bargaining sounds and some strange animal chirping came from the shops on both sides of the street. He didn't lie on the glass to see the delicate gold-plated astronomical model. Soon, they came to a snow-white building towering high above the surrounding shops. Next to the gleaming bronze gate stood a goblin wearing a scarlet and gold uniform. Mr. Lambert vomited in Chinese. Is this a goblin? Is it a goblin that looks like a human being? The goblin looked up at them and then said weakly, Who is Hogwarts fresh? Exchange currency to a special window. There is a sign to remind you. Entered the Golden Hall of Gilling Pavilion, and indeed there was a counter with a sign of Hogwarts newborn currency exchange hanging on the corner of the hall. Hello. Lane went to the counter to greet the goblin. New student, say your name. Ryan. Liang. Confirm. There is you on the list. The goblin took a parchment and looked at it. Freshmen can exchange up to 200 gallons per year. After handing over a pocket, Mr. Lambert took out a stack of £50 denominations from the bank last night and handed them to the goblin at the counter. Then he said to Ryan, This is a bit like Waxia. Last time your cousin told me that his exchange of pounds was also a quota for everyone, and he had to write a lot of documents. After the money was exchanged, the two decided to buy from familiar things first, so they went to various shops and purchased items listed on the list of magic robe, textbook, crucible, balance, potion, crystal bottle and so on. You reading www.uukanzu. Of course, Ryan refused to suggest that Mr. Lambert sent him a pet because he excused him in a strange place and might need all his energy to deal with a new environment. The shopping process went well, but thinking about spending a large sum of money on a scammer's novel next year, Ryan was a little depressed. Finally they came to the door of a small shop that was small and broken, and the gold signboard on the door had been peeled off. The signboard said, Ollivander, since 382 BC, a good wand has been made. In the dusty window beside the door, a magic wand was solitary on the faded purple cushion. Pushed open the store door, Ryan found a man in a suit with his daughter trying a wand, and their backs looked a little familiar. Before he could think of his back from his mind, Mr. Lambert stepped forward and greeted softly, Mr. Granger. I didn't expect to meet you here. Ryan remembered that this Mr. Granger was a dentist. The clinic was not far from home. He had also visited his clinic to check his teeth. The most important thing was that his daughter was in the same grade as his school, but not A class. Every time is the second place in the school exam grade. Lane, college students take the first place in elementary school. Not proud, be humble. Suddenly, Ryan froze. Granger, dentist. Brown curly girl, went to Hogwarts in 1991. It is easy for him to guess who the girl is. I didn't know before. On the one hand, I thought it was an ordinary world. I didn't think in that direction. On the one hand, Miss Granger looked a bit different from the actor. The most important thing was that the name of the girl he heard in school should be Close Hermione, far from the pronunciation of Chinese Hermione. Ryan felt that this world was malicious to this outsider, and it seemed that his plan after 7 years had to be revised again. Chapter 5, Wand & Grocery Store. First guest. After a few words of greeting, Hermione chose her wand and ran from the counter. Dad, see, I have a wand. After seeing Ryan, he asked with a little surprise, Ryan, you also want to go to Hogwarts? Yes. At this time, Mr. Granger and Mr. Lambert greeted each other, and held Hermione to say, there are still a lot of things on the list that I haven't bought. I think we'll be quicker. After that, he and his son and Ryan left one shop. After saying goodbye to Granger's father and daughter, Ryan came to the counter. He found an old man who looked very energetic standing behind the counter. This should be Mr. Ollivander. He had light-colored eyes. The store is like 2 moons. Hello, I'm Ryan Liang. I need a magic wand to go to Hogwarts this year. Ryan greeted a little nervously. Oh, a newcomer. Let me see what kind of wand you are suitable for. Ollivander took the tape measure out of his pocket. Which arm do you use for the wand? Ah, it should be the right hand. Lane replied. The tape measure is now wrapped around like a rattan, and Ryan starts to automatically measure the date with each part of the body. Ollivander took this opportunity to take some boxes from the back cabinet. Wands are not mass-produced, and each one is unique, so I need to pass tests to find the right user for my wand. The tape measure quickly finished measuring the body data, and rolled into a ball under Ryan's feet. So Mr. Ryan, try this wand, made of ebony and unicorn hair. 8 inches and a half long. It's very flexible. Lane waved a box suddenly flew out of the cabinet, almost hit his head. It seems that the probability of hitting the bullseye for the first time is not high. Then try this again. Hollywood, snake nerve, 11 inches long. When testing the 7th wand, as soon as he held the wand handle, Ryan felt a warm current suddenly spread all over his body, and some mice shot from the head of the wand. Ah, great, you fit this wand very well, Mr. Ollivander said with a smile. He put this wand in a long box, wrapped it in brown paper, and said in his mouth, Pinewood, phoenix feathers, 12 inches long, is a wand that is very picky to the owner. You are lucky. After paying Ollivander 8 gallons, Ryan and his father left the wand shop. After some purchases, there are only more than 70 gallons left on his body. Considering that Hogwarts has to eat and live, so much money is enough in the school. Finally, they went out of the Broken Cauldron bar and called a taxi, and took home big and small things. After tea time, Miss Sally kept asking the father and son about today's experience. They spent a lot of time to calm down the boss' curiosity at home. While eating scones, Mr. Lambert asked Lane, do you think the wizards can write novels by themselves? Ryan thought of the reporter-esque quill pen in the 5th grade and said, I think the wizards can make their pens move, and they may even have automatic correction pens, but Dad will write it yourself if you want. It is estimated that there will be no novel pens. After listening, Mr. Lambert shook his head a little disappointed. After the holiday, Ryan was immersed in the research of a large number of textbooks at hand, and occasionally went to the nearby Park Howe fast food restaurant Hermione Lily to discuss the problems encountered while reading. Seriously, Ryan thought about staying away from the protagonists, but later thought that as an 11-year-old child, he began to alienate the only acquaintance who could go together after knowing that he would go to a strange place. How could he think about this kind of thing, so suspicious in the future? It is better to let it go. Since this period of time was the only time when it was possible to cast spells in the non-magic world, Ryan used all the spells on the books for more than 20 days. Unfortunately, only some very simple spells can be used. It seems the magic spell can't be used without knowing the spell, and it's the same reason that you can't practice peerless martial art only by looking at the cheats. On the last night before heading to Hogwarts, Ryan packed his luggage and prepared to go to bed early. Suddenly a sound came from the system in my mind. There are guests coming. Please do the reception work. Ryan immediately got up and stopped. After thinking about it, I put a part of the magic plant seeds purchased in Diagon together with the breeding manual in the bag, and then I went to the grocery store. Entering the grocery store, Ryan found that there was no change here, and when he left last time, just beside the flower pot on the shelf, there was an extra glass bottle with a lot of golden particles in the size of soybeans. Took the bottle. A message passed. Crystal Sunlight, a special product of small planting base, producing 1 plant every 2 hours. Can be used to catalyze plant growth and provide sunlight. Using method, it needs to be buried in the roots of plants and meet the needs of water and fertilizer. When you need sunlight, Please soak the crystals in the water, which can provide equatorial noon sunshine for an hour within a radius of 5 meters. Of course, if crushed, you can get a burst of 5 times the brightness of sunlight in 3 seconds. Previously, Ryan asked the system to plant new plants in his own yard because when the house was empty, zombies would not be interested, so apart from the outermost pea shooter, other places planted sunlight mushrooms and sunflowers in half. Now that small courtyard is full, more than 100 crystals of sunlight can be produced in one day. After reading the new items, Ryan sat behind the counter and let the system let in the guests. There was a twist in the air at the door, and a middle-aged white man in a thick fur coat came in. The man had thick snow on his shoulders, as if he had just come from the ice and snow. After the man entered the door, he might feel a little hot and unbuttoned himself. Ryan found that he was wearing a gorgeous Victorian dress. He saw Ryan behind the counter, showing an incredible expression, and his footsteps paused, but he finally walked to the counter and said solemnly, "Boy, I and my people are in trouble. When I was desperate, I was guided here by the sound of my life, hoping that destiny did not make me a cruel joke." Ryan said, "Can you tell me what went wrong? Only by knowing what happened, can I be sure I can help you." This middle-aged man began to introduce the dilemma he faced. From his words, London, global cooling, steam core and winter house. Ryan knew that this uncle came from the winter house in the Ice Age of the previous game. They were the people who chose to take the fearless ship after the energy tower exploded. However, the difficulty of this transfer exceeded expectations, leading them to lack all the resources they need. Hearing this, Ryan began to recommend plants to his uncle. "I have 3 plants here, 2 can produce sunlight during the day and night, and the other can normally produce 7-10 adult fists per day. Large pea. The pea soup made from each pea after grinding can serve the needs of an adult a day." After listening to the detailed introduction, the middle-aged man grabbed Ryan's hand excitedly and kept thanking him. After his emotions calmed down, Ryan asked, "I'm asking for an equivalent exchange here. What are you going to exchange with me?" Middle-aged man shuddered. "We left in a hurry when we left the United Kingdom. We only brought survival supplies and no money." Ryan looked at the valuation table given by the system and said, "I can't use your paper money either. I have a wide range of payment methods here, from precious metals, materials and technology. The things I provide can save your life. You should also come up with something of similar preciousness." The man thought for a while and said, "You give me the seedlings and breeding techniques of these 3 plants. I use our most critical differential machine, energy tower and robot technology to exchange with you. The deal, although your technology tree is completely different from mine, I definitely don't need it." As soon as Ryan's words fell, a space door emerged around the man, and a golden light flowed out, turned into a book on the empty shelf, with a golden cover on the cover and the Winter House Industrial Manual written on it. After confirming that the payment was received, Ryan gave all the plants and a book in the bag to the middle-aged man. At the same time, hand over the bottle full of sunlight crystals. "It takes time for plants to grow and grow. You can use this to rescue." The middle-aged man's eyes are a little wet, and he pulls out a delicate gold shell pocket watch from his arms and puts it in Ryan's hand. "You reading www.uukanzu.com. Thank you for your help. This is the most valuable thing in me. I hope to express my gratitude to you." After finishing, he bowed to Ryan, turned and dragged a large cloth bag with plants and left. Then the sound came from the system. "You saved a city, changed your destiny, and gained 3 offset points." Offset point? What is this? Lane looked at the system display panel, and found that in addition to the connected world, the data column of offset point was added. It turns out that as long as his actions affect the original destiny of a certain world, different amounts of offset points can be obtained depending on the degree and the world. Offset points can be used to randomly open the door to a certain world or to open the door to the guest world that has passed through the grocery store. It can also be used to master power. In the grocery store, general knowledge obtained from the transaction can be instilled into Ryan's brain for free. But in terms of extraordinary power, the greater the difference from the world in which Ryan lives, the more deviation points are needed to learn quickly. For example, if Ryan wants to learn internal force, reading and explaining only takes time and luck to learn. After using the offset point, he can master it instantly. After figuring out the purpose of the offset point, Ryan opened a space door to the world of Plants vs. Zombies and handed over the promised magic plant seeds to the crazy Dave. A dozen minutes later, Ryan appeared empty-handed in the grocery store, because Dave said he could only decide what to pay for by determining the purpose of these seeds, but fortunately, his seeds provided inspiration for Dave's new plant development. So 1 offset point is obtained. After finishing all this, Ryan left the grocery store and returned to his bed, waiting for the moment to go to Hogwarts the next day. Chapter 6. The journey started at platform 9 3/4. Early the next morning, Ryan's family got up early to clean up. After breakfast, Lambert and Sally put on their coats. After loading the luggage, the 3 of them got on the car together. Ryan looked at Sally in the front passenger seat and asked in surprise, "Mom, aren't you going to work today? You left home for the first time in your life to go to school, so I took leave today to send you off." Madam Sally gave a smile. Because it was a little traffic jam on Sunday, it was already around 10:15 when I arrived at King's Cross Station. According to the previous reminder of Mr. Arthur, they came between the 9th platform and the 10th platform. Here, Ryan found out that there were more than a dozen pillars, and they didn't know which pillar was in the 9 3/4 station. Can't hit them one by one, it would be stupid. Fortunately, more than half an hour before the departure, they still have enough time to find the platform. After 5 minutes, when everyone started to feel anxious, a timid voice came from the side. "I will remember to write a letter every week and let the owl bring you. I hope you don't forget, Neville." An old lady sighed. After listening to this conversation, Ryan looked at the words with a bright eye. I saw a serious old lady and a round-faced boy, dressed in black robes that were out of place, and came over with a luggage cart. Ryan pulled Mr. Lillimbat's clothes corner, then pushed the trolley and followed. "Hello madam, I am a freshman at Hogwarts. Now I want to go to platform 9 3/4, but I don't know where that platform is." "A freshman from Mole background?" The old lady smiled and pointed to the boy beside her. "My grandson Neville is also a first-year freshman. You should all be here for the first time." After that, the old lady said to the two children, "You just have to look straight at the ticket gate between platforms 9 and 10. Just go. Don't stop. Don't be afraid, just shoot straight in. If you're nervous, you can run." Then the old lady turned to the Lane family. "The mole on that platform can't get in, so you will have to say goodbye outside. But don't worry, I will accompany the two children." After hugging her parents and comforting her mother who started to have red eyes, Ryan pushed the trolley towards the column where the platform was. As he approached the wall, Ryan closed his eyes nervously. But the expected collision did not happen. He continued to push the car forward. Opening his eyes, a dark red steam locomotive stopped at the platform crowded with passengers. The sign hung on the train read, "Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock." Steam was permeating on the platform, and the screams of owls and people's voices came from the white mist, and various kinds of cats drilled under the feet of people. Soon, Neville and Grandma also came in from the outside, and the first few cars were already full. The old lady and her two children found an empty compartment in the middle of the train. After Ryan and Neville got in the car, Mrs. Longbottom used a floating spell to help them put their luggage away. After telling Neville about it, he slowly walked into the white mist and disappeared. "Your grandma is a little harsh, but he loves you very much," Lane said to Neville. "Maybe, but I am still afraid of my grandma." After a whistle sounded, the train started. Ryan watched a tree and a house flash through the car window, and there was a sense of excitement in his heart. He knew that this time he was no longer just a bystander of a legend, but a participant in the story. Because Neville was a little shy, the two were a bit cold after introducing each other. While embarrassed, Ryan suddenly discovered that a huge toad with the palm of an adult was struggling to squeeze out of the door. Ryan fluttered immediately to catch the toad. Neville said in surprise when he saw, "I clearly put LiFu in my bag, why did I run out again?" Using this toad as a primer, the two began to chat slowly. Talking and chatting, the two found out that they had a lot in common. For example, they are all the only children in the family and are not raised by their biological parents. But the people who raised them loved them all. Was chatting enthusiastically, and suddenly the door of the compartment opened. A little brown-haired girl probed and asked, "There is time." "Ryan, you are here." Turned out to be Hermione Granger. She was a little late when she got on the bus, so she didn't find a seat in the front car. After the three people introduced each other, Hermione asked Neville curiously, "If you were born in a magical family, then there must be a lot of magic. Unlike us, we can only learn a little magic by the time before school starts." "No, it's not like that," Neville replied. "My grandma didn't let me touch my wand at all until I was 11. They always thought that if a child uses the wand too early, something bad will happen. The magic can't be cast, and I feel like I'm too stupid." "No, no," Hermione and Lane said in unison. Then Hermione made a pleased gesture. Ryan cleared his throat and said, "You are wrong to self-identify like this. I think your inferiority complex and external pressure have affected your learning. As long as you can make a reasonable plan and insist on doing it, repeat practice. Even magical learning should be rewarding." After speaking, Ryan pointed to Hermione. "I went to school with her. In fact, her learning talent is much better than me. But I passed a good study plan and repeated practice, and each final exam was better than her score. It's better. So work hard and you'll be fine. When we get to school, I think we can help each other and get the learning together." After filling Neville with a lot of chicken broth, Neville looked better than before. The three began to exchange some of their own observations. Lane looked at Hermione and found that she didn't seem as proud as she was on the train in the original book, and no one was there. Ryan thought it might be because in the original story, Hermione came to the magic world alone. For an 11-year-old girl, who reads www.whenyoucanzoo.com leaves a familiar environment, a familiar person will definitely feel lonely and scared when he goes to a completely strange place. It is inevitable to use arrogance to add a layer of camouflage to yourself. At noon, three people bought some food from the witch who sold snacks in the car. After filling his stomach, maybe because he got up too early in the morning and was too excited afterwards, Ryan fell asleep against the seat for a while. How long after this, Ryan woke up and found that the sun was about to set outside, and he should be in school immediately. Ryan saw that Hermione and Neville were asleep in their seats, so they stepped forward to wake them up. After that, the three people took turns to change their clothes in the cubicle, and the speed of the train also slowed down. It seems that it is indeed coming. The train will arrive at Hogwarts in 5 minutes. Please leave your luggage in the car and we will take you to school for you. The voice echoed on the train. It seems that there is no need to pull the dead suitcase by yourself, which is really good news. Is this the world of magic? Ryan felt that although he was a man of two lives, he was still very nervous. It feels as if the entire stomach has turned over. He turned his head and found that Hermione was scratching her hair a little nervously, and Neville's face also began to pale. The train stopped slowly, the door opened, and the three of them jumped off the car together. Found themselves on a small platform. The students crowded the entire platform. Suddenly, there was a bite in my head. Under the influence of the shop owner, the three-member team of the Savior failed to meet on the train and obtained 1 offset point. What? Ryan looked at the system information dumbfounded, which means that if he wants to get more offset points, then he needs to do something at Hogwarts. It seems that his Hogwarts life is not so peaceful. Chapter 7, Enter the Castle. The cold on the platform made Ryan tremble, and then a rough voice came over. The first-year freshman. The first-year freshman is here. Lane saw a group of students standing among a group of students, holding a lamp in his hand. The hair on his head was lush, almost covering his entire face. A pair of beetle-like dark eyes gleamed in the tangled hair. This should be Hogwarts caretaker Hagrid. Above the crowd of people, Hagrid's face with a big beard smiled. Come on, come with me. Are there any first-year students? Beware of your feet. Well, first-year students, come with me. All the freshmen followed Hagrid. Stumbled down a rugged and dark path, and Neville almost slipped. Fortunately, Ryan helped him in time. Turning this corner, you will see Hogwarts for the first time soon, Hagrid shouted back. Turning around, even if Ryan's soul is in his 30s, he is also mentally prepared, but he opened his mouth with students and exclaimed. At the end of the narrow path, a black lake suddenly unfolded. On the high hillside across the lake stood a towering castle with spires on it, and a window shimmering under the stars. Each boat can't exceed 4 people, Hagrid said loudly, pointing at a small boat moored on the shore. Ryan and Hermione got into the boat, and Neville followed. Are you all on board? Hagrid yelled, taking a boat by himself. That's good to go forward. A team of boats immediately drove across the flat lake and faced forward. This is the entrance ceremony for freshmen. Ryan looked at the towering castle and recalled the books he had read in his previous life. That's how the 4 founders followed this road and drove a small boat across the Black Lake to Hogwarts. So later students also have to take this road once. The fleet slowly approached the castle. Head down, Hagrid shouted loudly as the first boats approached the cliff. Everyone lowered their heads, and the boat carried them through the ivy tent covering the front of the cliff to the secret open entrance. They seemed to reach the underground of the castle along a dark tunnel, and finally reached a place similar to an underground pier, and then climbed up a piece of gravel and small pebbles. Everyone followed Hagrid up a stone stairway and gathered in front of a huge oak door. Are you all here? After asking, Hagrid raised a big fist and knocked 3 times on the castle gate. The door opened immediately. A tall dark-haired witch in an emerald green robe stood solemnly in front of the gate. This should be Professor McGonagall. First-year freshman, Professor McGonagall, Hagrid said. Thank you, Hagrid. Leave it here to me. After, Professor McGonagall motioned all the freshmen to follow her. It can be seen that the stone walls on both sides of the passage are surrounded by burning torches. The ceiling is so high that the top can hardly be seen. On the front is a luxurious marble staircase that leads directly upstairs. Turning a corner, Professor McGonagall took the first-year freshman to a small empty room at the other end of the hall. Everyone rushed in, huddled together with their shoulders rubbed, staring nervously at everything around them, because it will be a very important moment afterwards. Welcome to Hogwarts, said Professor McGonagall. The school banquet is about to begin, but before you enter the restaurant, you first need to determine which college you are entering. The classification is a very important ceremony, because while you are in school, the college is like your home in Hogwarts. You have to take classes with other students in the college, stay together in the college's dormitory, and spend time together in the college's common room. After school time, the names of the 4 colleges are Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw and Slytherin. Each college has its own glorious history and has produced outstanding wizards and wizards. During your stay at Hogwarts, your outstanding performance will make your college win extra points, and any violations will make your college lose points. At the end of the year, the college with the highest score will get the college cup, which is very high the honor. I hope that no matter which college you are assigned to, you can win glory for the college. In a few minutes, the branch ceremonies will be held in front of the teachers and students of the school. I suggest you to sort yourself out while waiting, and be more energetic. Wait when it's ready, I'll pick you up, Professor McGonagall said. Please be quiet while you wait. Finally, Professor McGonagall left the room. The atmosphere in the small room became tense, except for Ryan as a traverser. Neville next to him seemed to tremble slightly. Hermione's lips twitched constantly, as if reciting something. After all, in the UK, Hogwarts is the only school of magic, and it would definitely be a shame for a lifetime to be kicked out. Lane looked around and found that everyone, including the freshman from the wizard family, was very nervous. It seems that this is an ancestral prank. He couldn't help but pity the British humor. Just as everyone was nervous, suddenly 20 ghosts sprang up on the wall behind. These ghosts slide across the room, paying little attention to these first-year freshmen. They seemed to be arguing. Suddenly they seemed to find a new life. New life. A chubby monk smiled at them. I think it's probably ready to be tested. Some students nodded silently. You reading www.uukanzu.com. I hope you will be assigned to Hufflepuff. The monk said. I used to go to that college. Now move forward, said a sharp voice. It's about to start. Professor McGonagall is back. The ghosts fluttered through the opposite wall and disappeared. Now, line up, Professor McGonagall said to the first-year freshman. Follow me. Through the foyer, the door of the auditorium opened, and the freshmen lined up to enter the auditorium. 4 long tables were filled with golden tableware. There were many students by the table, but there was a section for each long table, which should be reserved for newborn. Lean looked up at the miraculous ceiling. Through the transparent dome, he could see the stars in the sky. It's hard to believe that this place is really not open air. Thousands of lit candles floated in the air, illuminating the entire restaurant without a drop of wax oil or a trace of smoke. It also shows the extraordinary nature of these candles and the details of the school. Hermione's voice came from the side. The spell was cast here, and it looks like the sky outside. I read it in Hogwarts, a school history. Professor McGonagall put a 4-legged stool in front of the first-year freshman, and put a top hat on the stool. This should be the sorting hat that the 4 giants have injected into the wisdom together, and it is also one of the cornerstones of Hogwarts. But seriously, the thought that this thing is used every year, but has not been washed. Lane felt his scalp seemed a little itchy. Soon after listening to the annual song of the hat, Professor McGonagall walked forward a few steps, holding a roll of parchment in his hand. Which name do I call now? Whoever put on a hat, sit on the stool. Xanhu branch. The highlight of the school, the branch ceremony began. Chapter 8. Branch Ceremony. Hannah Abbott. Professor McGonagall shouted the first name. Sure enough, this is the ironclad Hannah Abbott mentioned in various fanfictions of previous life. Ryan vomited. But sorting by the first letter of the surname should indeed be her first branch. I saw a little girl with red cheeks and 2 golden dresses. She stumbled out of the queue and put on a branch hat. Lane he thought that at the end of the story, Hannah Abbott became the owner of the Broken Cauldron Bar and married Neville Longbottom. And then look at this little rash girl. An excitement to participate in history emerged spontaneously from the bottom of my heart. Hannah sat down on the stool, and after a while, she heard the branch cap prolonged and shouted, Hufflepuff. The people at the table on the right applauded and applauded Hannah, welcoming her to sit at their table, and the fat monk ghost beside the long table happily waved to her. Susan Bents. Hufflepuff. Susan hurried to Hannah and sat down. The branch continues, and Ryan finds that every time the hat reads a name, the tone changes. It seems that the usual life of a hat should be very monotonous. It is really a poor hat. Ryan began to guess which college he would be assigned to before he remembered his name. Because of the pedigree, Slytherin is definitely impossible. As for Ravenclaw, Ryan, who is a scumbag, said that it is estimated that others cannot look down on themselves. So the possible colleges are Gryffindor and Hufflepuff. The atmosphere in both schools was pretty good, but after seeing Hermione assigned to Gryffindor, Ryan began to lean towards Gryffindor inwardly. After all, there is an acquaintance of a super student, better than no one knows. After Neville Longbottom returned the hat to Professor McGonagall, Ryan's name was pronounced by Professor McGonagall. So he buckled up the hat that had probably not been washed at all since the school was founded in 993 AD. Communicating with the hat is a very novel thing. Even if Ryan has experienced 2 lifetimes, he has never encountered such a thing before. After the hat was put on the head, Ryan heard a subtle voice saying, although I think your idea is a bit impolite, but thank you for your concern. But the life of the old hat is not as boring as you think. I can feel your kindness and courage. Then I decided. Before Ryan reacted, the subtle voice turned into a loud shout. Gryffindor. Lynn took off his hat and put his respectful hands on the stool, although the hat was dirty and torn, patched. But he is more representative of Hogwarts than this magnificent castle, because the wisdom injected by the Big Four makes it a representative of Hogwarts' spirit. After bowing to the professors, Ryan walked to Gryffindor's long table and sat next to Neville. After a while, Harry Potter was also divided into Gryffindors like the original text, and the people on the whole table stood up and cheered. After Professor McGonagall returned from the branch cap, Dumbledore stood up from the golden chair in the center of the teacher's seat. He looked at the students with a smile on his face and extended his arms to them. It seemed that there was nothing more joyful than seeing the students together. Welcome, he said. Welcome everyone to Hogwarts to start a new school year. Before the banquet, I would like to say a few words. That is, stupid, crying nose, residue, twist. Thank you. He sat down again. Everyone applauded and cheered. Ryan looked at the opposite Hermione and asked, what does the principal mean? Hermione replied a little confused, I haven't seen it in the book. This may be a special welcome message from the magic world. Nevi interrupted the two of them at this time. Don't think about those first. Hurry up and eat. Don't you feel hungry? Lane saw that the empty tableware was just full of all kinds of food. He took some boiled potatoes, pea sprouts and tomato sauce with chicken according to his usual dinner habits. Even after living in the UK for 10 years, Ryan is still not used to eating a lot of meat at night. Fortunately at home, the adoptive father is also a Chinese. The family's diet brings some Chinese style. When everyone ate almost the same, the rest of the food disappeared from the plate. Dinner plates and forks are as smooth as ever. After a while, the pudding came up, and there were all kinds of ice cream. With the help of sweets, everyone had a smooth conversation. Ryan and Hermione kept asking Percy some academic questions. This lively atmosphere continued until the dessert disappeared. With the disappearance of the last dessert, all kinds of tableware also disappeared, and the table became clean as if it had just been placed. The restaurant was quiet, and Professor Dumbledore stood up again. Everyone, I think everyone is full. So, I would like to make a few notes to you. First of all, please pay attention to the first-year freshmen. All the trees in the campus are forbidden to enter. Some of our old classmates should also remember this. Dumbledore's shining glances towards Weasley's twin brothers. Secondly, the administrator Mr. Filch also asked me to remind everyone that you reading books www.uukanzu.com do not cast magic in the corridors between classes. The review of Quidditch players will be held in the second week of the semester. Anyone who is interested in participating in the college team, please contact Mrs. Hyochi. Finally, I must tell everyone that those who do not want to suffer accidents and miserable deaths, please do not enter the corridor on the right of the 4th floor. Hearing this sentence, a few freshmen laughed, but most people kept quiet because most students know that Dumbledore, the principal, never lie about safety. Ryan knew that this was the level of the magic stone at the end of the semester. But this thing has nothing to do with him. After all, these things were prepared for Harry and Voldemort. The outsider himself should try not to blend in. Although the magic stone is very precious, you will definitely be able to exchange a lot of good things when you get a 1G grocery store to meet your needs. But thinking about what Dumbledore kept staring at, Ryan gave up a bold idea. After all, he didn't want to be regarded as the enemy by the most powerful white wizard. Dumbledore paused, let everyone digest the news just now, and then said aloud, well, everyone, before everyone goes to bed, let us sing the school song together. Almost all teachers were stiff. Dumbledore flicked the wand gently, and a long gold ribbon flew out of the wand, twisting and winding like a snake on the high dining table. Everyone chooses their favorite tune. Dumbledore said, be ready, sing. Lane felt a little embarrassed, but still according to the tone in the movie tidbit he had watched, finished singing the whole song. When Dumbledore announced that bedtime had come, the Hogwarts opening ceremony was officially over. Chapter 9, Gryffindor Lounge. Under the leadership of Captain Percy, the freshmen walked through the noisy crowd, walked out of the restaurant, and climbed the marble stairs. The people in the portrait of the roadside corridor whispered as they passed, pointing, and Percy led them through the door hidden behind the sliding baffle and hanging curtain twice on the road. Ryan felt that the castle in Hogwarts history is a refuge in the Dark Ages. It should be true that only when the castle is used as a military fortification, there will be so many inconveniences used to block the aggressors' baffles and hidden channels. Everyone yawns, even if Ryan is no exception. It seems that the body of 11 years old is still not fully developed. Otherwise, Ryan, who was good at repairing immortals in her previous life, would not be trapped like this until 9 o'clock. Dragged heavy steps and climbed many stairs again. It felt that the stairs seemed to be enchanted. When they might not be able to climb all the time, the people in front suddenly stopped. It turned out that Pippi was messing in the air. Fortunately, Percy drove him away. They went on again, and at the end of the corridor, Percy told everyone they were there. There is a portrait hanging at the end of the corridor, on which a very rich woman is wearing a pink dress. Password, she said. Dragon slag, Percy said. I saw the picture moved forward swaying to reveal a circular hole in the wall. They all crawled through the hole in the wall. Ryan pulled Neville in and then they found out that they had come to Gryffindor's common room. This is a comfortable round room. The hole is golden and red tones, filled with soft armchairs. In the position against the wall, there is a burning fireplace, which dissipates the coldness in the ancient castle a lot. Obviously, freshmen are very sleepy. The seniors knew this too. They didn't say much. Percy directed the girls into a door and went to their dormitory, and then led the boys into the other door. On top of a spiral staircase, Ryan found his bedroom. Fortunately, he and Harry are not in the same bedroom, otherwise in the 3rd grade, there is a 1/5 probability of hitting 2 o'clock in the morning. There are 5 beds with 4 curtains in the bedroom, with crimson flannel curtains hanging. The luggage has already been delivered. Everyone was exhausted after a day of train travel and dinner. They didn't want to talk anymore and fell into bed and fell asleep. Because of a habit that was formed before, Ryan woke up from the dream the next morning and found that it seemed a little early, and the sun had just risen. He was the first to wake up, and the roommates were still sleeping. A first-grade class schedule was placed on the head of the bed. Ryan was a little surprised because he had never slept lightly and would wake up when there was someone next to him. This timetable can appear on the head of the bed without any response from him. It can only be said that the house elf is really powerful. Looked at the timetable, there are 8 courses in the first grade. Basically, the class time is from 9 to 12 in the morning from Monday to Friday, and from 2 to 3:30 in the afternoon. Only astronomy classes will be held from 8 to 9 in the evening. Seriously, this is much shorter than Chinese junior high school. After washing, thinking about having no class in the morning, he gave up the plan to wake up his roommate and went down the stairs to the common room. Hermione was already sitting on a sofa, holding a book while reading. "Good morning, Hermione." Ryan waved his hand. He then sat on a sofa next to Hermione and asked, "Although there is no class this morning, I still have breakfast." "It's not a good idea to skip breakfast." Hermione turned the book on her hand to a certain page, then pointed to the content and said, "I learned from the book History of School at Hogwarts. There are a total of 140 stairs in the castle. 2 places. Some of them are wide and big, some are narrow and small, and swaying. Some go to different places every Friday, some go halfway, and a step will suddenly disappear. Worse still, there are many doors here. If you ask them to open them politely, or poke the right place, they won't open the door for you. Some doors are not real doors at all, just one. The block looks like a solid wall of the door. It is not easy to remember which things are in where, because everything seems to be constantly moving. The people in the portrait are constantly visiting each other, and to be sure, even Armor can walk." Hermione closed the book booth and opened her hand. "So I can only wait here now to see if there is a senior who can take me. Now it is us who will take us to the restaurant." Fortunately, before long, footsteps came from the stairs, and a girl with black hair and a braided ponytail came down the stairs. Ryan immediately stepped forward for help. The sister who claimed to be Angelina Johnson was very enthusiastic and helped out, let Ryan and Hermione follow her to the auditorium, and explained to them the passage of special stairs and secret doors. Method. Finally arrived at the auditorium, she told Ryan that these things change regularly, if you try to remember the characteristics of these stairs quickly. Dinner. Ryan couldn't help but envy Hufflepuff because their dormitory was the closest to the restaurant and was still next to the kitchen. Reading books. www.uukanzu.com. After dinner, Ryan had planned to go around the castle while he had no class in the morning. After all, as a fan of Harry Potter in the previous life, he arrived at Hogwarts. How can you not take a look at the familiar places described in the book? Unfortunately, this plan was disrupted by Hermione. She believed that self-study before class was very important, so she decided to go to the library and sent an invitation to Ryan. Thought that if she didn't go to the library, Hermione might be despised by the eyes of the scholar and could not hold her face. The additional library is also an important place in the original novel. Ryan gave up the original plan to hang out in the castle and went to the library with Hermione. The library is located on the 2nd floor of Hogwarts Castle and has a high dome. Thousands of bookshelves and thousands of books are stored inside. It may be because it was morning, and they discovered that there were not many students in the library. Hermione came to an empty table and sat down, opened the textbook to read it, and occasionally remembered something in the notebook next to her. Ryan selected several books on the current state of the magic world and read them. After all, the previous news is not comprehensive, and the novels seen in the previous life can only bring some first-hand, but these comprehensive introductions to the magic world are the cornerstones of survival in this wonderful world. After more than an hour, it was time for Hogwarts to finish class in the morning. A large group of students were busy in the library looking for information and writing homework. Obviously, the surrounding environment made Ryan feel a little irritable. He saw Hermione immersed in the study and did not disturb her. After borrowing a few books from Mrs. Pins, Lane left the library with the books in between. Lane still didn't remember the route upstairs. Fortunately, he met Nick, who was almost headless on the road, which made him finally return to the Gryffindor Tower. Chapter 10. Hogwarts First Contact. Studying in Hogwarts Castle, the first difficulty you need to face is that most of the things in the castle are alive. For example, it can move escalators, steps, armor, oil paintings on the walls, and a door that needs to be opened or disguised by special means. Yes, when the descriptions in the novels and the pictures in the movie really appeared in front of Ryan's eyes, he felt extremely excited to see these for the first time. But when this excitement passed, the difficulties caused by the constantly moving furnishings in the castle really showed in front of us. The complicated interior structure led Ryan to spend a lot of time when looking for a destination. I have to say that Hogwarts has a slow pace of life, which is probably related to these troublesome facilities. The worst thing was that on Tuesday afternoon, on the way to the classroom, he even met Pippi Ghost, which caused him and several classmates to be late for the first lecture of Dean Professor McGonagall. When they panted into the classroom of the defamation class, they found that it was not time for class, but some students had already sat down in the classroom to do their own things. This classroom is not much different from ordinary middle school classrooms, except that a cat is squatting on the desk. Hermione, who came in with Ryan, was obviously a cat lover. She tried to scratch the chin of the cat on the desk, but unfortunately the cat hid dexterously. Ryan stared at Hermione stunned. After he entered the classroom focusing on finding a seat, it was unexpected that Hermione, who was very stable in the impression, would have such a bearish side. Ryan pulled Hermione back, who wanted to puff the cat, and saluted the cat. Hermione looked at Ryan with questioning eyes. After returning to her seat, Hermione asked Ryan across the aisle, "Why are you saluting the cat?" It seems that Hermione is really not a slow person. The cat above was changed by Professor McGonagall. She is one of only 7 registered animagus in this century. Look at the cat's eyes. Is the pattern exactly the same as Professor McGonagall's glasses? Ryan said softly. Hermione looked up at the cat, and suddenly her entire face turned red. She buried her face in her arms and said in a very light voice, "You know why this thing didn't tell me earlier?" Ryan didn't know how to answer. He thought to himself, a cat standing on the podium is not a normal thing in itself. How can I guess that? You will get started directly to touch it. Similarly, was the mature and stable Hermione lost. A few minutes later, the time for class arrived. The classroom door was pushed open again, and Harry and Ron rushed in. "Great. Professor McGonagall is not here yet," Ron said happily to Harry. The voice dropped, and the cat on the podium jumped down and turned into a humanoid. "MC Professor McGonagall." Ron suddenly looked as if his face was earthy. "I think I should turn you into an alarm clock so that you will not be late," McGonagall said a little angrily. "We just got lost, Professor. That's why you should be turned into a map myself. Don't be late again next time. Go back to your seat." The two of them ran into their seats and sat down. "Ryan Liang, you are the first freshman to recognize me this year. It seems that you have excellent observation skills and have carefully prepared before class, so Gryffindor is very good." Ryan then walked onto the podium. "Transfiguration is the most complicated and dangerous spell in your Hogwarts course," she said. "Anyone who wants to be mischievous in my class, I invite him out, and never let him in again. But I have warned you." Then, she turned her lectern into a pig, and then changed it back. The students were all attracted, and wished they could start learning immediately, but they soon understood that it would take a long time to turn furniture into animals. After they wrote down a lot of complicated and difficult notes, she sent them a match and began to make them try to become a needle. Sure enough, as Ryan thought, magic is not just a spell that can be cast by waving a wand. This is a very rigorous knowledge, which contains many profound theories. It seems that to learn magic well, just simple training is not enough, but also to learn to understand the principles. Morphology is a subject that is simple, and difficult to say. For example, a freshman can turn a match into a needle. But if a master is allowed to do such a thing, then this needle can be of various materials, various styles, and this deformation effect can be maintained for hundreds of years. And apart from the difference in magic power, this gap is the understanding of the magic itself and the grasp of various material properties. Especially in the latter point, it takes a lot of time and energy to accumulate. It is not speculative. Ryan took a moment to combine the pre-lesson preparation with the knowledge copied to notes in this lesson to understand the principle, and then began the actual operation. The conversion from theory to practice is not as simple as imagined. Until the end of the class, he turned the match into a needle, but it was still 3 minutes slower than Hermione. You read www.uukanzu.com and the changed needle was still no pinholes. Ryan thought he was shameful, but after looking around, they found that other people's progress was slower, and even the matches in front of some people did not change at all. After class, Professor McGonagall nodded to Ryan. "After all, for beginners, it is already a good performance to make items change." Of course it is true. The situation of learning bar Hermione is an example. In addition to Professor McGonagall's transformation course, Ryan has also gained a lot in several other courses, whether it is a spell or herbal medicine class. In the curse class, Professor Flitwick was a small wizard, and when he remembered the name of Harry Potter, he fell down from the pile of books excitedly, which made people feel a bit exaggerated. However, he has a deep knowledge of spells and is very happy to answer the students' questions. After many inquiries, Ryan feels that his spell level has improved rapidly. In the herbal medicine class, Ryan felt that it was handy to deal with those plants, and even got a bonus from Professor Sprout. This is probably a special bonus of the Tanzowl lineage on the land. However, the history of astronomy and magic is not so interesting. The first grade of astronomy is purely some observation records and some simple calculations of the astrological cycle, which is very boring. The history of magic is taught by a ghost, Professor Binns. During the class, Professor Binns kept talking in a monotonous voice, and the students scribbled notes. From what the professor tells, Ryan can get a lot of knowledge outside the history book, and even many major historical events Professor Binns has experienced in person. However, the professor's monotonous and non-stop lecture style makes people feel drowsy. So after each class, he had to borrow the notes of the only student in the class who was not asleep, Hermione. Chapter 11. Hogwarts First Contact. Wednesday was the time for the first Black Magic Defense class. Ryan came to the classroom with excitement and came to look at the big boss behind the scenes. Ah no, it's Chilo, a professor of Black Magic Defense. Seriously, sitting in the classroom is less than 10 meters away from the story boss. It is a very magical feeling. Hogwarts Professor of Black Magic Defense skills. These decades have always been famous for one time. But even if this is the case, there are so many wizards coming to apply for it every year. This behavior can be seen as why there are so few series of foreigners in the wizard version. So British wizards don't lack courage. The most important thing is that all the professors on the street are not at a low level. Even Professor Lockhart, who is famous for his straw bale, can obtain information from a group of experienced wizards and give them a perfect oblivion curse without ever failing. And another Umbridge, not to mention the political tactics of driving Dumbledore away. Looking at her quill pen, you know how high she is in black magic. The remaining professors, Lupin, who had been in the wolf crowd for many years but had not been killed by the enemy werewolves. Professor Snape, the greatest double-sided spy. A little Crouch who can hide for a year under Dumbledore's eyelids. Even in the 7th grade, the Death Eater professor, carefully selected by Voldemort, Amicus Carlo. All can be regarded as the elite of the elite. It's just that Voldemort's curse was too strong. In the end, only the surviving Lockhart and Umbridge, who were home to prisons, survived. And this year's Professor Chilo was famous for being a top student when he was in school, let alone upgraded to Chilo Voldemort Fusion Professor after adding an attachment to the back of his head. Unfortunately, when they merged, something might go wrong, and Professor Chilo did not show the characteristics of a strong alliance. The classroom where he took classes was full of garlic, and in addition to studying in the class, he was bragging about some adventures that could not be justified. Ryan guessed that Quirrell tried to hide himself and avoid being targeted by Dumbledore. But to be honest, this kind of situation that changes a lot compared to usual is easier for people to find abnormalities. It seems that if the two brains are not compatible together, the IQ may not be as good as one brain. After nearly a week of study, it was Friday and the potion class time for Gryffindor students was most afraid. Potion class is a class in an underground classroom. It is colder than the main building of the castle above, and there are glass jars of soaked animal specimens along the wall. It looks like a lair of the legendary evil wizard, and many students are terrified. After class, Professor Snape slipped Harry Potter out and practiced after reading the famous opening speech. Ryan looked at the famous scene in the movie, and the thought of father and son repaying this kind of thing came to mind. Sure enough, it is a rule common to both the East and the West. After finishing Harry and making excuses to take a breath, Snape began to divide everyone into two. Instruct them to mix and prepare a simple potion to treat scabies. Unfortunately, due to the initials of the surname, Lane was assigned to Neville Longbottom. This made him not only to seriously complete the work of Boiled Pharmaceuticals, but also optimistic that Longbottom cannot let him go into trouble. Thankfully, Longbottom is just a little clumsy and lacks confidence, but doing things very seriously. When you follow the steps in the book to weigh the dried nettle and smash the snake's fangs, it does a good job. Professor Snape walked around in the classroom. Ryan's group was approved by Snape on the grounds of lack of heat while cooking tentacled slugs. Just when Ryan heard Snape praise Malfoy for the perfect method of cooking tentacled slugs, he extended his neck and tried to learn Malfoy's operation. The afterglow in the corner of his eyes saw Neville thrusting the porcupine into the crucible. Lane was overwhelmed, grabbed Neville's arm, and Neville looked at Lane with a puzzled look. Lane whispered, "It's not written on the blackboard. The porcupine thorn can only be put after the pot is opened from the fire." Navi opened his mouth slightly in amazement, and it seemed that he had forgotten about this. The system jumped out without losing time. The shopkeeper prevented the Neville Frypot incident and gained one offset point. Professor Snape emerged silently from behind, and then he twirled around Harry and Ron at the next table. "Potter, why don't you tell him not to include the porcupine thorn? You think he's out? Would it show you how wrong? Gryffindor lost a point because of you again." It seems that Professor Snape is an unforgettable hate for James Potter. 1 hour later, the course was over. Everyone handed in the potions, and Lane discovered that Snape wrote them on his potion label. Well, long live the pass. Walked out of the classroom door, Neville continued to thank Ryan, because this is the rare case where he did not blow up the crucible and could make qualified potions without being injured. Ryan felt that Neville's operation was not so bad, but Professor Snape put too much pressure on everyone. Even if he was the soul of an adult, when Professor Snape passed by, he felt that Han-Mau stood upright, not to mention the influence on Neville, a boy who was usually not brave. You reading www.uukanzu.com. At this time, Harry and Ron came from behind, and Neville stepped forward and said to them, "I'm sorry, this time you are deducted points." Harry smiled, and didn't speak. Ron waved aside and said, "It's okay, it's not to blame you. We have long known that Snape is not a reasonable person. The potion class is on Friday, so after the potion class, the first week of classes begins. There is no class to take in the afternoon." After lunch, Ryan took all the learning tools and went to the library to prepare for the weekend homework. After all, Doing homework ahead of time and having fun with it was always easier than trying to get home at the last minute. After arriving at the library, Hermione was already sitting there. Ryan said hello and began to sit by the side to do his homework. To be honest, Lane in his last life was in his student days, has always been a supporter and practitioner of the theory of enough scores. In this life, he had intended to touch the fish for 7 years after receiving the letter from the owl. But I did not expect to be able to go to Hogwarts with elementary school students, in order to avoid a sudden drop in grades and cause suspicion, and in order to avoid being acquainted with contempt and staring at the letter or even knowing it in the letter. My parents knew that Ryan can only take most of time is spent on learning. This kind of life reminds him of the preparation for the college entrance examination in his previous life, which is not a good memory. But every time he thought of the supremacy of power in the magic world, and knowledge is power, Ryan felt less tired of learning. At dinner time, the two people finished most of their homework, and then went to the auditorium with their school bags together. This made Ryan recall that he was carrying his school bag with his classmates and returned home with him when he was in elementary school. It feels good to be young. Lane, who is a 30-year-old man, said quietly in his heart. Chapter 12, Flight Lesson. All weekends, Ryan was called by Hermione to read books in the library except for a circle around the Black Lake on Saturday morning. Originally, Ryan didn't want to go, but after observing it in the common room for a few days, he found that the entertainment projects in the wizarding world were nothing more than chess and card projects or Quidditch. For Ryan, who passed through the information age, it was really boring. In contrast, various magic books are more interesting. In addition to reading books, Ryan sat by the fire in the common room on the evening of the holiday and chatted with classmates. Sometimes, some students will ask for homework, and Ryan will help them patiently. While helping his classmates, Ryan finally knew why the professors were so angry when they were correcting their assignments. Some people copied the original text from large sections of textbooks, and some people had no logical logic in front and back paragraphs. The most extreme, even when the number of words in the deformed class assignments was not enough, followed by a potion lesson assignment. Not to mention a lot of grammatical and spelling mistakes that Ryan didn't make much in his life. Can only say that the Hogwarts teachers are very good-tempered. If he is replaced as a teacher, he will definitely take a few speculations and swell his paws. Looking at the eyes of classmates praying like small animals, the soft-hearted Ryan can only sigh in silence. A little bit of inspiration to these little guys to write homework, and teach them the format of writing papers in previous life. However, on Sunday night, Ryan also firmly rejected the request of individual students to copy homework. The day passed, and Ryan slowly established an image of a principled good man among his classmates in Gryffindor. Of course, at the same time, the image of Hermione Granger is a little solitary. Ryan once hinted to Hermione about this problem several times, but unfortunately she still went her own way. After more than a month after the semester started, a notice was posted in Gryffindor's public lounge, and the flight class was about to begin on Thursday. Gryffindor students were to take classes with Slytherin students. Apart from being a bit frustrating to play with Slytherin, the other news is quite exciting. Within a few days after the notice was posted, everyone from the Wizarding family chatted about Quidditch, except Neville Longbottom. Ryan listened to many stories, but he couldn't understand the fun of Quidditch. However, Ryan also learned from classmates' chats that every few years, there will always be one or two little wizards who are forced to apply for exemption due to insurmountable fear of heights, and then be treated as a coward in the courtyard. He prayed silently, hoping that he would not be a member of these bad luck. In everyone's heated discussion, it was time for Thursday. During breakfast in the morning, Hermione kept talking about some of the flight instructions she saw from a library collection called Quidditch Traceability. Everyone except Neville was bored by her chatter. Looking at this situation, Ryan made a quiet gesture to Hermione. It's actually the same as swimming. The theory is not useful anymore. The most important thing is to try it. Hermione opened her mouth, as if to refute something. But the owl's letter interrupted what she was about to say. Neville's grandma sent her a memory ball. The result was almost robbed by Malfoy, but fortunately Professor McGonagall came quickly to deal with the matter. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the first-year students of Gryffindor and Slytherin came to the former venue to prepare for their first flight class. The weather is good and it is a good day for flying. There are dozens of flying brooms neatly arranged on the ground. I heard from the seniors that these brooms are old, and even a few can be regarded as antiques. Lane glanced at the broom. As a result, it was found that many broom branches had fallen a lot, and the end of the hand was also glowed by the warmth of the disc. The situation of these brooms seems worrying. Their teacher Mrs. Huochi is here. She has short grey hair and yellow eyes, like the eyes of an eagle. It is a very capable lady. Okay, what are you guys waiting for? She snapped. Everyone stands beside a flying broom. Quick, quick, hurry up. When everyone stands, Mrs. Huochi shouted in front, extend your right hand, put it on the broomstick, and then say, get up, apostrophe. Get up. A messy voice was heard. Less than 1/5 of the brooms followed the instructions. Obviously Ryan was 4/5, and his broom just rolled on the ground. Fortunately, after a dozen times of repeated shouting, The broom finally jumped into his hand. Next, Mrs. Hyochi showed them how to ride a broom without sliding down. Ryan takes it very seriously, although he knows that Mrs. Pumphrey's craft is very good. Even if the bones of the entire arm are gone, they can be grown again overnight. But as a normal person, Yu reading www.yuukanzu.com certainly does not want to enjoy the advanced medical level of the magic world. After correcting everyone's gestures, they entered the actual operation stage. After a whistle, everyone floated to a place about 1 meter above the ground. After a few minutes of testing, Ryan found that he might not be good at broomsticks, and how to practice at most is a riding level. Just as Ryan had just returned to the ground following Mrs. Hyochi's instructions, there was a cry of exclamation next to her. It turned out that Neville was too nervous, which caused his broom to get out of control and the whole person to rise quickly. Then he didn't hold the broom firmly and it fell from the sky. Ryan originally thought that Neville would fly up before Mrs. Hyochi whistled according to the memory of the original work. So be prepared to act early to avoid things happening. But there was no problem until Mrs. Hyochi blew the whistle, and Ryan thought his butterfly wings had fanned the accident. After seeing Neville ascend, Lane subconsciously took out his wand from his pocket. Later, when he fell, a floating spell was read to him. Unfortunately, Ryan's spells are self-taught, and the effect is not good. Neville only paused in the air for less than a second, then fell heavily on the grass. Mrs. Hyochi ran forward nervously to check Neville. Wrist fell, maybe a little bit cracked. Everyone heard her whisper. It seems that the floating charm is still a bit effective, which is much better than the original fracture. However, it is probably because the change is not large, so the system has no response, but at least this is a help. Ryan is very happy. Okay, boy, it's okay, you get up. Mrs. Hyochi lifted Neville and said. She turned around and warned the other students in the class to let them put the broom back. After that, he took Neville to the school hospital. Chapter 13, Midnight Duel. After Mrs. Hyochi took Neville away, Malfoy began to provoke Gryffindor students. It was really difficult for Ryan to understand how a person in the wizarding world who advertises a noble lineage can be a gangster on the street with the street. After Malfoy took Neville's memory ball and flew up, he provoked Harry Potter. Hermione wanted to stop Harry Potter's reckless act of following, but failed. After a tense air chase, Harry Potter finally snatched Neville's memory ball. But it was also taken away by Professor McGonagall. On the way back to the castle, Hermione was a little worried. Shouldn't they really fire Harry? Shouldn't, Lane replied. Harry made a small mistake at most, and no normal school would expel people for such a small problem. How could Harry do this? Didn't he think about how many points this would deduct before he flew up? Lane stopped and turned to look at Hermione. I know you are unable to accept Harry's behavior because of the honor of the college, but in that case, Malfoy's bullying behavior is really disgusting. Harry, it's just out of righteous indignation. I don't think it's appropriate to blame him for his just behavior. Hermione said, you may make sense, but I can't understand why your boys are so reckless. Can't we let the professors deal with it? After speaking, Hermione shook her head and went to the auditorium. Because the flight lesson is today's last lesson, some people have come out to eat in the auditorium one after another. When Ryan slowly walked into the cafeteria, seeing Harry and Ron sitting at the table, and what Malfoy was saying to him, Lane saw Hermione beside them, so she passed by and heard Hermione say to Harry, you can't wander outside at night. After a few words between them, they left angrily. Ryan walked over and sat next to Harry and Ron. Ron asked Ryan and asked, are you planning to discourage us like Hermione? No, I am not. Lane denied. It's just that you haven't thought that Malfoy will not show up and tell the teachers the possibility of pitting you. After all, Ron, you always said that Slytherins are very cunning. No. Ron's face twitched. The Malfoy family is the oldest family of pure-blood wizards. He should not be so shameful. Play tricks in the wizarding duel he initiated. Lane looked at Harry, and Harry said, I think it's reasonable for Ryan to say that this possibility is not impossible, but if he went and we didn't go, we would be laughed at by him for a lifetime. Suddenly, Harry seemed to think of something. Ryan, I think when you rescue Neville today, the spell is quite powerful. Simply go with us so that we can stare at the teacher alone. Lane thought for a while. Today is a very important main task. In order to offset the point, it is necessary to establish a good relationship with the Child of Luck on the plane. Thinking of this, Ryan agreed to Harry's request. They arranged to meet in the common room at 11:30 in the evening. Lane feels a little excited. After all, how can the Hogwarts Night Tour Gryffindor traditional project not experience it for yourself? Besides, even if you are caught, the simple night tour will be deducted at most, and you can do some after-school labor. The problem is not big. After returning to the common room, Neville had returned from the hospital. It seems that this time the injuries were lighter than in the original work. After seeing Ryan coming back, thanking him with a stumbling grip in his hand, Ryan comforted him. At 11:30 in the evening, the roommates were asleep, and Ryan quietly opened the door. Harry and Ron saw the opposite door also drilled out. Greeted each other, they quietly walked towards the portrait channel, and the light closest to the channel turned on. Hermione sat there wearing a cute pink pajamas, frowning. You actually did this, especially you Ryan, how did you mix with them? Ryan, relax, Night tour is also a part of Hogwarts life. Look at those seniors and elder sisters. There are a few who haven't gone out at night. After all, we have to learn to follow the customs of the village, not to mention the life as a wizard. A very important part of it. I haven't seen a wizard duel yet. Shut up. Be careful, I write to your parents. Hermione followed them through the hall. Don't you think we should have won the Slytherin Academy Cup? I can't watch you throw away all my hard-earned points at once. It's okay. If you really want to lose points, I will earn this point with you, I swear. Two people quarreled while crawling across the passage. Well, I don't care about you anymore. She turned to prepare to go back to the dormitory and found that the painting she was facing was empty. The fat lady went out late at night and Hermione was locked out of Gryffindor Castle. God, what should I do? Hermione asked. That's your problem. Ron said, we have to go. It's almost late. Anyway, you have violated the school rules. Let's just go together. At least it's safer than you standing here. Lane said to Hermione. Sometimes, the best way to avoid being accused is to drag the accusers into the water. You reading www.uukanzu.com. Why? Ron exclaimed softly. At least two people just happened to be able to monitor the entire corridor. Lest the night watch teacher really appear, we can't hide. Okay. Harry turned around and said, be quiet, or we'll be caught on the road. After walking 10 minutes nervously, they came to the showroom on the 3rd floor, and various medals in the room appeared to shine under the moonlight. Harry and Ron walked into the showroom, while Ryan and Hermione squatted at the door, and from time to time they protruded half of their heads to observe the situation in the corridor. Time passed by 1 minute and 1 second. Ryan saw a cat in the corridor rushing out of the staircase, and then a limping figure also walked out. It seems that this should be Filch. Lane patted Hermione. Hermione also widened her eyes nervously, and they slowly returned to the showroom to inform Harry. Then the four people crept to the door away from Filch, and then walked along the armored corridor. It's just that they didn't go fast in order to prevent Filch from hearing the sound. But Filch seemed to find something behind, and the footsteps were getting closer. Finally, Ron finally tripped on the armor under tension, and the sound of the armor falling to the ground spread throughout the corridor. The four people could not care about any concealment. They quickly ran along the corridor. After going upstairs and downstairs, after crossing several corridors, they finally could not run. Everyone bent over to support their knees, panting, and Ron asked, "Here, where is this?" Lean looked at the surrounding environment, and he made a chuckle in his heart, because this is near the 4th floor of the Cursed Class classroom, and the forbidden ground guarded by the three-headed dog Luai is nearby. Is the inertia of the plot so great? Chapter 14, 3 Dogs. We are now at the door of the Cursed Classroom, Ryan said to Ron. Sure enough, my worries are justified, but are the wizards of the Pureblood family generally so untrustworthy when facing a duel? Never, Ron retorted. Only Slytherin's snakes are likely to do this, like our Weasley family will never do such a thing. The Weasley family? I think I might have encountered one. An official from the Ministry of Magic called Arthur Weasley who guided me to the magic world helped us a lot. He is really a warm and nice person. Thank you for your praise of my father. Ron smiled friendly at Ryan. It looks like we got rid of him. Hermione wiped the sweat from her head and said, I have said. Before she finished, Harry interrupted her. We must hurry back to the dormitory and can't stay here anymore. Looking at Harry's expression, he might think Hermione was right, but he didn't want to admit this in front of Hermione. They just got up. A door in the hallway opened, Pippi floated out, and screamed happily after seeing them. Nasty freshman, walking around in the middle of the night. Gee, naughty, naughty, you will be caught. Hermione was just about to step forward to plead, and Ryan pulled her and ran forward, yelling at Harry at the same time. Here's a Pippi, pleading is useless, hurry and run. Harry was still a little stunned, but Ron reacted, grabbed him, and hurried forward along the corridor. At this time, everyone could not ignore the sound of his footsteps and tried to escape along the corridor. Pippi's shout came from behind. Students don't sleep, they are in the hallway of the spell class. 4 people escaped to the end of the corridor together, only to find that the door at the end of the corridor was locked. And Filch's footsteps came from the corridor behind. It's over, Ron whimpered. They pushed the door in despair. And Ryan is ready to be caught. After all, compared with the 3-headed dog, Filch looks more affable. Go away. Hermione rushed to the door suddenly. She snatched Harry's wand, knocked on the door lock, and whispered, "A hole." The lock clicked and the door opened. Ryan's face changed sharply, and before she had time to say anything, Hermione was pulled in. He sadly found that women of this age developed earlier than men. He was pulled into the room by Hermione when he was caught off guard. Then with a bang, the door was closed. Sure enough, Pippi Ghost is Pippi Ghost. He will ignore anyone in this school except for a little respect for Professor and the Bloodman Barrow. Filch was teased by Pippi but got nothing, cursing angrily. But at last he left with nothing to do. Harry breathed and said, he must think that the door is locked. We are finally safe. I don't think so. Look back, Lane said with a trembling voice. Probably the big dog Luai, who has the blood of the 3-headed hell, appeared in front of everyone. They are facing the eyes of a monster-like dog, which is so big that it fills all the space from the ceiling to the floor. It has 3 heads, 3 pairs of ferocious eyes, 3 noses twitching and trembling in their direction, and 3 drooling mouths, like a slimy rope. From yellowing dogs the teeth hung down. It stood there motionless, all 6 eyes staring at them. Ryan knew that this dog would fall asleep as long as it heard music. At first he thought that knowing this weakness was not so difficult to deal with this dog. But at the scene, he discovered that when you face such a huge beast, you can't sing songs at all. Glanced down. Sure enough, a door leading to the basement was stepped on by his dog. This should be Dumbledore's test of Harry, and it's a little suspicious that Pippi deliberately drove them in this direction. At least the principal should be able to order the ghosts of Hogwarts. If he really doesn't want people to come to this place, the principal can completely order the ghosts to rush the students who are near here in other directions. Think of the levels in the original book. Except for the final magic mirror, the others are too playful. It really doesn't seem to be used against the Dark Lord, and if those levels happen to be the advantages of the 3 passers-by, is it a bit too coincidental? Fortunately, this is just the beginning of the main storyline. For now, don't worry about being elected as a brave candidate by the principal. At least Neville is not considered a brave man in the original text. At this time, the door lock was unscrewed, and Harry turned the door handle. Then they quickly went out and closed the door. Fortunately, the dog was tied to the wall with an iron chain and could not be chased out. Then the 4 men desperately ran upstairs to the Gryffindor Tower. On the way, Ryan quietly stuffed the crystals of the sunlight in his pocket before departure back into the grocery store. This was what he had prepared beforehand just in case. At that time, he hoped to use the Sunshine Crystal Flash Bomb. Reading www.uukanzu.com to buy time for escape. Went very well. They ran to the front door of the 8th floor, and the fat lady had returned. She asked curiously how the embarrassed 4 people made this happen, but no one wants to speak, and then opens the door with a password. Stumbled back to the lounge, then collapsed on the sofa in the lounge. The 4 people were silent for a while. Ron broke the silence. Why should the school keep such a fiery beast in the castle? Are they not afraid of something going wrong? And Hermione panted at this moment and stood up. Don't you see it standing on a trapdoor? It should be guarding something. Then she glared at the 3 boys. I hope you are happy for today. We were almost bitten to death or worse, expelled from school. Well, if you don't object, I'm going to bed. Well, as an innocent person involved, Hermione's anger is completely understandable, especially this adventure almost let everyone die. Sitting for another few minutes, the 3 went upstairs together, and then said goodnight to each other at the door of the dormitory before returning to their respective dorms. Ryan felt sore all over her body, so she didn't wash her. She took off her clothes and went to bed directly. In bed, he reflected on his behavior today. Sure enough, it was still a bit reckless. The most important thing was that I was lack of strength, even if I knew what would happen in the future, but I was unable to change it. Thinking of this, he made up his mind. I had been afraid of facing a strange world before, so he didn't open the door to a new world in the grocery store. It seems that he can't go now. After setting a new goal, Ryan turned over and slowly fell asleep. Chapter 15, the first active copy. Early the next morning, when Ryan saw Malfoy at the dining table and found that Harry Potter was still in school, the surprised expression he showed was, really, just like Malfoy's expression. It still looked cute. Harry and Ron seemed to discuss something in private, but every time Ryan approached, they would stop discussing. It seems that they have begun to guess what is under the trapdoor the big dog is looking at. There is another situation that is not good or bad. Hermione started to stop talking to Ryan. This made Ryan a little bit lost, but it also gave Ryan more time to spend time with other students in the courtyard in the common room. Several students said to Ryan that they felt a lot relaxed without Hermione sitting on the side. It seems that Hermione's handling of interpersonal relationships is a bit problematic. However, after more than a week, after Hermione was caught by Harry who got the Lightwheel 2000, Ryan finally found the opportunity to apologize to Hermione. As an adult, after bringing the outsider into danger, he said to the victim there's nothing to lose his face in this apology. The relationship between the children is not so many. So after a week of inactivity, Hermione also forgave Lane's recklessness, and the relationship between the two returned. It's time for the weekend again. After everyone in the dormitory sleeps at night, Ryan pulls off the bed to cover the roommate's sight, and then chooses to enter the Wanji grocery store. Lane had tried to wait and see if there were any guests coming home. But besides coming to the school, the mayor of the Winter House of the World of Ice Age had visited. More than a month after school, there was no one at home. Didn't know until after entering the Wanji grocery store and communicating with the system again. The probability that the guest came to the door was directly linked to the power of the owner. The last time we had a guest came, it was a very good indication of luck. Since there is no way to wait for the rabbit, Lane can only walk to the door of the grocery store and start to choose the world to traverse. The new world is divided into 1 to 9 levels according to the degree of danger from low to high. The offset point required to open the space door starts from 1 point, and the number of points required for each level increase is multiplied by 2. The previous world of Plants vs. Zombies was divided into 5 levels. Think about it too. A world full of fine plants and super powerful zombies. It's definitely not as simple as in the game. Ryan thought for a while and thought that the first and second tier worlds may not have what they need. Even if they can get firearms, they are all conventional world weapons. They have no professional training and are only 11 years old. They can't use anything powerful individual weapon. Furthermore, shooting a 3-headed dog or a monster in a narrow space with a gun is like committing suicide by running a close-up shot of an elephant with a pistol in a cage. Not to mention that Voldemort has no form at all and is immune to all physical attacks. And like Malfoy, an inconspicuous classmate, it is too much to shoot with a gun. Like the 5th level world, the world of Plants vs. Zombies is good luck without encountering many enemies. But you can't put everything on your luck. Think about it. If you are unlucky enough to meet a large group of zombies, Ryan's current strength is definitely unable to deal with it. In addition, he has only 6 offset points, so the 3rd level world has become the only choice. After was decided, 4 offset points were paid. A flash of light flashed over, and Ryan crossed dash, the dividing line through dash. If you get the omnipotent superpower, what are you going to do? Obviously, Ryan is facing this problem in the world. On the edge of a clearing in a small forest, Lane hid behind a big tree. Fortunately, it was night, and he, who was wearing a black school uniform, could easily hide in the darkness in the woods. When I just crossed over, I looked at a piece of turf under my feet and the surrounding trees. There is also a big pit around him, and there is an inexplicable voice coming from the big pit. Ryan knew that he had come to a popular location through which the movie could be out of control. Think also, this world with 0 threshold can quickly gain combat power. Even if so many movies are inside, it is rare. The protagonist of the original movie, Lane, is full of regret. In a world without superpowers, someone suddenly becomes a superhero and exposes himself to the outside world. In fact, the ending is not difficult to imagine. As long as the Transcendental has not formed an organization, as long as it is not completely invincible, then there must be an organization trying to control him and kill him. Even if he is really invincible in power, as long as he still has a touch of humanity, he can always find a way to control him, and even let him commit suicide. After all, no matter how powerful the individual is, it can never be compared with the collective strength. Fortunately, he entered earlier. Ryan's magic robe took off and covered the hole, and then applied a transforming technique to make the magic robe look like the grass around, and then hid in a nearby tree to observe the situation. Waited for about an hour. 3 young people passed by the grove and saw 2 white people and 1 black person in the distance. It seems that this should be the original protagonist. They turned around in the open space, then left, and found no hole covered by magic. As soon as they walked out of Ryan's field of vision, a ding sound came in their minds. Completely reverse the plot and get 20 offset points. Great harvest. Ryan threw a fist in excitement, but unfortunately there are not many opportunities, and at the beginning, the plot was prevented from happening, and the drift point could not be harvested continuously, so different methods of intervening in the plot can only be said to be different pros and cons. For the original protagonists, although they cannot become superpowers, it is not a bad thing to avoid dying of death or incognito and give up all the endings of going far away. After confirming that the protagonist trio had left, Ryan ran to the edge of the cave and opened the magic robe and jumped down. This hole is not big. Without taking a few steps, turning around a corner, Ryan saw a sea urchin-like crystal with blue light. He thought for a while and reached out to grab a piece of crystal column born on the crystal. At this time, the system once again showed a line in his mind. Whether an item that can be used as a commodity is included in a grocery store. Whether Ryan chose yes, the crystal disappeared in front of him. As the crystal supporting the cave disappeared, the stones and mud at the top of the cave began to fall. Lane fled to the hole quickly. You read the book www.yuukanzu.com and then climbed up to the ground. After running a distance, Lane entered the woods. There was a loud bang suddenly behind him. He grabbed the trunk of a tree and looked back at the clearing. A mid-sized minivan-sized sinkhole appeared in the open space. Lane knew that his goal in this world was basically settled, so he returned to the Wanji grocery store. On the shelf, Ryan found that the power crystal became slap-sized and placed in a partition. The bottom sign says that by performing some kind of stimulation on the brain, the user can be given up to 100 tons of thought power. The number of available times is 3/3, and they cannot be stacked. Ryan hesitated with this piece of crystal for a long time, and finally gave up the decision to let himself gain power, because he didn't know what kind of effect this stimulation would have on the brain. If this stimulation will cause irreversible effects on the brain, what if the magic ability is hurt? After all, magic is now the foundation of his standing, and it is a little more than worth the risk to take this risk for an innate ability that has a limit of power. This crystal is still reserved as a transaction item. Although this adventure did not gain the planned power, at least 22 offset points were accumulated. After the inventory was counted, Ryan endured to turn his head and then looked at the impulse of the powerful and fast power source and chose to return. Lied in bed and looked at the alarm clock. As before, It only disappeared for an hour. It seems that no matter how long you spend in another world, you will only spend 1 hour in this world. Is really good news. It will be much more convenient to arrange the time in the future. Ryan analyzed the process of today's adventure in his mind a little, and then threw himself in the futon for 10 hours, and soon fell asleep. Chapter 16. In the Battle of Plants vs. Zombies. Early the next morning, Ryan got up early and decided to go to a more dangerous world next time. But before that, he needs to learn more magic and gain more power to ensure safety in the adventure. After all, a world with many gains but little risk like superpower loss is only a small part of all the world. It is more likely that the daily routine is to be besieged by a large number of monsters as soon as a new world is reached. As he had breakfast, the system heard new news. Crazy Dave improved several plants based on the magic plants he brought a month ago, and now invites Ryan to test them with him. Test plants? That is to fight. But if you want to be with Dave, and you can return at any time, there should be no problem with safety. Lean thought about it and wanted to accept this invitation. After all, when he could not improve his ability in a short time, using some external force is a very good way. After breakfast, Ryan went to the library to study with Hermione as usual. Ryan seemed a little absent-minded because he had to think about the actions at night. This state was even discovered by Hermione. Ryan, what's wrong with you today? It feels a bit wrong. I have read a page for almost 10 minutes. I haven't turned the page yet. Oh, it's okay, but today's condition is a bit bad. Thank you for your concern. No, I didn't care about you. Just Uncle Lambert asked me to look at you. I can't eat it. After that, Hermione turned her head proudly, and then opened the thick book and started taking notes. Ryan also took out the paper arranged by Professor McGonagall and wrote it. Saturday was spent in the daytime study. After dinner, he exchanged the contents of the weekend homework with several classmates in the common room. Ryan returned to the dormitory. After the roommate fell asleep, he began to cross again. I am the dividing line through . Standing in his yard, Ryan looked at the flourishing plants in the yard, and then walked to the back door of Dave's house on the courtyard wall. Before knocking on the door was opened violently. The little guy is coming in. I'll wait for you for a while, and I will go to the laboratory with me to see Dave's new invention. After he finished speaking, Dave moved towards the room. Go inside. Lane followed Dave forward while listening to his chatter. The plants you found, I have never seen anything like them. They are really amazing, and I brought countless inspirations. I combined them with some local plants, and it works well for those nasty zombies. It's hard to imagine. It's really curious what world they live in. As they said, they came to the living room. Dave sat on the two-seater sofa, and then begged Ryan to sit up too. After the two were seated, Dave took off his shoes on his left foot and pressed his left thumb on a flower painted on the floor tiles. With the sound of a drop, a seat belt popped up and tied around the waists of the two people. Then the sofa fell back sharply, and then the seat belt was retracted back. Dave stood up quickly and pulled Ryan up. Bypassing the sofa, Lane discovered that there was a downward staircase just under the sofa. Lane looked at Dave. Why do you have to sit on the sofa when you start the machine? Because I feel that shaking my head like this can inspire my new inspiration. Then why do I sit there? Dave feels that good things can't be kept alone, and need to be shared with partners. Lane zigzagged down the stairs, and walked down about 4 or 5 floors high, before an alloy door appeared. Dave ignored the scan camera next to him, but put his face on the glass of the fire equipment box beside the door to verify his face. The alloy door opened. Dave, look. I designed this to ensure that no enemy can think of it. You can also install a similar one in your house. Ryan, I don't know what to say. I can only nod politely. Behind the gate is an underground space half the size of a football field, about 3 floors high. The entire space is illuminated by sunlight crystallizing. This is my laboratory. There is an intelligent system that I made to help me manage this laboratory. Dave is very powerful in any way, he said proudly. Come with me. Followed by the new varieties produced with the plants you brought. Walked through the rows of soilless cultivation tanks, Ryan saw various familiar plant varieties in previous games, such as cherry bombs, nut walls, potato mines and so on. The plants also looked at him curiously with their small eyes open and whispered to each other from time to time. It seems they like you very much, little one. Dave stood at another door and beckoned Ryan. Come in and see the new members of our plant army. After entering the door, Ryan found that it was a small room of about 100 square meters. In addition to all kinds of incomprehensible tall scientific instruments that occupy half of the space, the rest are rows of iron shelves and several plants grown on them. While Ryan was looking at the plants on the iron shelf, Dave came behind and started to introduce them one by one. Because the time to get these things is too short, so now I have only developed 3 new plants. You reading www.uukanzu.com pointed to a half-tall cabbage. The first kind is a variety that was cultivated by combining the bite gale seeds you gave. Cabbage boxer. He can always beat the zombie. In front of him, the voice just fell and the cabbage closed his eyes and made a boxing preparation. Isn't this the species in Plants vs. Zombies too? Lane was puzzled. But think about it, no matter whether the plants in 1 or 2 are cultivated by Dave. So, inspired by your own plants. It is normal to cultivate some new plants in advance. Dave pointed to a bin next to the cabbage. This is a spring bean. It can bounce off the zombies beside him. Thank you for the pimple. Yes, the pods of the vine tell me that resilience can also be done against zombies. Lethal. Finally Dave led Ryan around a few shelves and came to the back of the house. Behind there is a row of strange plants with a dragon's head. I always thought that the dragon was only a legend until you gave me that bottle of dragon blood. Lane, 10 gallons only had a tube of blood the size of an adult's index finger. It was a robbery? He asked me to take plants and animals combined with the ability to cultivate this unprecedented plant, Huolongkou, based on the largemouth flower. It is like a flamethrower. After introducing the newly added plants, Dave said, I invite you to come this time, hoping that you and I will complete the tests on these plants, and then clean up a large wave of zombies that are in the immediate vicinity. I can give you part of the newly recovered building together with the promised remuneration. Anyway, no one in the village needs a new house. Lean thought for a while, and simply replied, no problem. As a human being, I don't like zombies. I'm willing to clean up these nasty zombies with you. Chapter 17. In the battle in the world of Plants vs. Zombies. Just returned to the ground, and there was a gust of wind outside. A note flew in from the open window and directly attached to Ryan's face. He smelled the smell from above. Remove the piece of paper, with a dark red blood stain written on a line of crooked words. We will come to visit in a while. Welcome to join us! Your friend. It seems that the battle is about to start. The background of the electronic alarm clock in the living room turns red and a harsh alarm sounds. A 2-minute countdown appeared. You go to the empty house next to it. There is no need to face the main force of the zombies. You only need to share my pressure from the side. By the way, it is enough to kill the scattered zombies. I have everything ready. As soon as he fell, Dave rushed out of the main entrance. Did not wait for the door to close. Dave rushed back again, buckling a brand new iron pan on Ryan's head. With this, you can direct the plants with your mind. After the door was closed, Lane crossed the house from the back door to the predetermined position. Lane was an old player in the Plants vs. Zombies series of games, seeing that he would personally command a real Plants vs. Zombies now. Besides being nervous, he even felt a little excited. Came to the scheduled position, and 4 bags of seeds were placed in the house. On his pocket a written sunflower, 50, pea shooter, 100, cherry bomb, 150, nut, 50. According to the manual placed next to it, in the battle mode, sunflowers can produce a beam of sunlight every 30 seconds. These sunlight can cause plants to become temporary weapons with a lifespan of only 3 days. Now the iron pot above Ryan's head can collect sunlight. All operations are similar to those in the game. 50 points of sunlight are pre-stored in the iron pot. Lin quickly planted the seeds of a sunflower in the yard, and then put the sunlight on the seeds. Like the fast forward in the documentary, this seed quickly changed from a bud to an adult sunny sunflower in a matter of seconds. After a while, a sunflower emerged from the sunflower, guided by Ryan's idea, and flew into the iron pot above his head. An unreal number also appeared in the upper left corner of the eye, 25. It looks like the game. Sunflowers produce at once. It's 25 o'clock sunshine. Just finished doing this, and heard the sound of zombies starting to climb up along the wooden board against the wall. Soon, the first zombie showed his head in the wall. The zombie made a terrible howl and then stumbled towards Ryan's house. From a distance, although the zombie does not have the stupid feeling in the game, it is roughly similar to the zombie in the game. The green skin is wearing ragged clothes. Both eyes protruded, and only a few yellow teeth remained in the open mouth. He walked and wobbled 3 times, occasionally groaning from the middle of his throat of unknown significance. There were only 1 or 2 zombies starting to rush into the yard, and Ryan planted the accumulated 50 points of sunlight into a new sunflower. Then continuously release petrified spells to the 1 or 2 zombies that climbed up. Although the effect is not good, but each magic can make the zombie pause in place for 5 or 6 seconds. With the work of 2 sunflowers, Ryan quickly made the first pea shooter. After a few pea hits, the zombie broke his neck and fell into the yard. After knocking down a few zombies with magic, Ryan suddenly found that a virtual image of a silver coin emerged from the body of the fallen zombie. When he put this in his pot with his mind, his pocket suddenly fell. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crystal of sunlight. This world is very interesting. Lane thought although the crystals of sunlight appear inside the zombie, it makes people feel neither scientific nor magical. As time passed, the sun was accumulating more and more, and Ryan put 2 sunflowers in the back of the courtyard. Then 3 pea shooters were planted in each row. There is also a row of nuts at the front. In this formation, the zombies turned into living targets and fell in front of the plants one after another. Ryan also took advantage of this opportunity to practice some of his magic. Occasionally, when some zombies gather, plant a cherry bomb to clear the field. After a few hours, as Ryan practiced several spells more and more smoothly, there was a burst of alarm from the Crazy Dave's house, and it seemed that the zombies' final offensive had begun. Hundreds of zombies rushed under the guidance of the zombie holding the flag. At this time, the hysteresis provided by the curse was a tremendous salary for such a large group of zombies. Soon, The zombies stepped on the body of the fallen zombie in front of them, and the attack of the pea shooter rushed to the front of the nut and began to bite the nut. Lin tried to put a cherry bomb on the place where the zombies got together, but there were too many zombies, and the cherry bomb hadn't exploded, so they gnawed away. No way, Ryan can only place cherry bombs on the edge of the zombie swarm to destroy the zombies layer by layer like peeling onions. Finally, after several nuts were nearly gnawed, Ryan finally killed all the zombies who ran into the yard. He originally wanted to go out and chase the retreating zombies, but thinking about Dave's account, he didn't move. As a result, after the group of zombies left, a few zombies were suddenly drilled out of the soil. They seemed to be ambushing. Cold sweat instantly flowed down the back of Ryan, plus a few hours of fighting consumed too much energy. Ryan sat on the steps in front of the door. Reading www.uukanzu.com took a breath. After sitting for a while, Lane saw Dave coming out of his house in a tractor. He ran to the road and saw that Dave was planting permanent plants on the roadside. Seeing Ryan coming out, he greeted Ryan to come and help take the hand. As long as the plants are planted here, then the zombies will not be able to approach this area on a large scale. We will retake a piece of land from the zombies. I promise you is also in this place. Was originally a bit indifferent. But when he heard the last sentence, the housing prices of his last life were very miserable, and he immediately stepped forward to help him with a floating spell to move things. Ryan felt weird to see Dave repair the fence with his rough hands. Because in that underground laboratory, there is an intelligent butler with high technology content. Dave boasted that he did it himself. So why not make some robots to help share these chores? During the break, Ryan asked this question. Dave drank from the glass and replied, "Do you think I want to work on my own?" "Unfortunately, the plants can only do simple movements and cannot move. They can't help me work, and my enemy, those zombies, he is a master robot. I'm not as good as computers and robots. Only in a fully shielded laboratory underground can I guarantee the safety of the system. As soon as I get out of the shielded space underground, my robot will soon become his in turn attacked me." Ryan also sighed. It seems that the two people are going to work this late into the night. This kind of manual labor is a bit too heavy for an 11-year-old child. Suddenly, the Ryan spirit machine flashed. "Uncle Dave, we don't need to do this kind of rough work again." Regarding the problem of robots being used by the enemy, I suddenly thought of a good way to solve this problem. Chapter 18, Under the Battle in the World of Plants vs. Zombies. Dave, who was sitting drinking water, was taken aback by the sudden cries of Ryan, and the water in his mouth was choked by the intake pipe, making a coughing sound. Ryan quickly stepped forward and slapped him on the back. It took a while for Dave to relax. He raised his head and looked at Ryan. "I can't solve a problem like a great scientist. How could you little one solve it?" Looking at the look of unbelief on Ryan's face, Mad Dave went on to say, "My enemy is called Dr. Zombie. He is a very intelligent zombie. He has developed many strange zombies, and he is also good at electronics, and machines can make robots bigger than houses. As a result of the failure of an evil experiment, Dr. Zombie synthesized the wisdom of many scientists. The most important thing is," Dave said in a low voice, "he can grab the pre-life knowledge that turned into zombies. For example, I just thought he was a pure zombie expert, so I made several robots as helpers, but every time the robot became his minions." Dave shook his head as if remembering something that made her feel unpleasant. "Although I am not as good as him in software, I also found some things. The programs he uses have many characteristics of other famous experts, and those experts were killed in zombie attacks without exception. So I guess that it is very likely that zombies will eat human brains and gain knowledge for Dr. Zombie." Speaking of which, Dave began to become frantic. "When I was almost desperate, by chance I started to study these plants that no one had studied before, and it turned out that Dr. Zombie lacked effective means for these plants. Even if he can devour and digest knowledge with evil means, he cannot learn to know new knowledge through normal means. So this is why he desperately controls his hands and attacks me, because only the great Dave knows that these will attack zombies. What happened to the plants? Only by eating my brain can Dr. Zombie know how to deal with these plants." After these words, Crazy Dave glared at Ryan with his eyes of different sizes, as if to say, "Such a powerful enemy, how can you, a child, have the power to fight him, to know his accomplishments in this respect? Quite experts in this world have accomplished this." Lean looked at Dave, who was full of disbelief, and said, "If you believe me, let me go to your underground laboratory, and I will show you the solution to the problem." Looking at the firmness shown in Ryan's eyes, Dave shook his head and took him back to the basement. Ryan did not sit on the sofa this time. Came to the base of the computer in the basement. Lane chose to extract a copy of the knowledge from the world of the Ice Age. As a golden light floated by, a USB flash drive appeared in Ryan's hand. After inserting the U-disk into the computer, with the help of artificial intelligence, the difference machine, the energy tower and the robot's stereoscopic projection were quickly projected in 3 dimensions, and various data were marked around. Dave pushed Ryan away and looked at the things in front of him with an amazing voice. "This is completely another civilized thing. Completely mechanical programming can enable these robots to log, mine, take care of greenhouses, and even take care of patient function. More importantly, this robot has a terrible reliability. Relying on at most the material and craft level of the early 20th century. It can work in an environment of -150°C. The most incredible thing is that this big guy is driving. It is actually those ancient steam power. After dancing wildly, Dave turned his head to look at Ryan. I finally know where your luck is. This robot does not rely on any electronic components at all. Even Dr. Zombie has no strong electronic intrusion ability. Way to invade an operating system core composed of gears and perforated steel plates. As long as the steam energy tower power supply and differential machine programming are used, I think I can start producing these robots soon, so that my army of plants can quickly add value, and I should be able to see the day when zombies are completely eliminated in my lifetime. Speaking of which, Dave crouched down and lined up with Ryan. This technology is very important to me. Both you and I are businessmen, so don't go around so many bends. You can make a price. Things are determined to be won. Lean thought for a while. I'm just a kid. I don't know exactly what this item can get from you. Well, since you are willing to believe Dave, then Dave will prepare you for trading commodities. You will definitely think this is a perfect deal. Although there is now a way to build a new robot, the two people still get the door to build a fortification to prevent zombies. Even with the help of magic, the two spent hours until the sun went down to get all the work done. Shouldn't there be any other people in this village? Why didn't they come out to help? After finishing his work, Ryan thought of something in the game and asked Dave curiously. It turns out that there are people in the town I live in, but when I found out that the zombies' target was mine, I moved to this abandoned town. It has been 3 years since you read the book www.yuukanzu.com. Back to Dave's house, Lane went to the bathroom to clean up, and Dave was ready to trade items. Done properly, Dave was sitting on the sofa waiting for Ryan. I can transfer 10 plants to you, 3 of which can be selected as advanced plants. After these, watching Ryan looked at him with emotionless eyes. He smiled awkwardly and then said, of course. In addition to these, a small greenhouse farm recovered this time will also be given to you as your plant cultivation base. After the robot is built, it will be ready for you. Hearing this, Ryan smiled at the corner of his mouth, and there was a steady stream of plants in the farm greenhouse. Seeing Lane smiled, Dave also breathed a sigh of relief and said, in addition, there is a farmhouse and the house you own now. After the robot is built, I will clean it up for you. Finally, Dave took a small pocket from behind and handed it to Ryan. Ryan stretched out a hand to take over the pocket, because he estimated the wrong weight of the pocket and nearly smashed the bag on his feet. He opened his pocket. It was found that there were some rough chestnut-sized gold ingots. When they were added together, they could weigh several kilograms. If they were taken back, they could be exchanged for about 1,000 gallons. Seriously? The alloy currency of Canaan. Note 1. Dare to press pure gold coins for the exchange of gold. The goblins of Gilling Pavilion are too dark. In addition to gold, there is a notebook. I think you are a complete human society and may need these golds. Anyway, I can't use them, so I will give you all the collected, Dave said, rubbing his hands. This notebook records my experience of growing plants. You can take a look. After selecting the plants, Lane said goodbye to Dave, and then walked out of Dave's house. The choice returned to the Wonji grocery store. Chapter 19, Count the Harvest. After returning to the Wonji grocery store, a systematic voice appeared in his mind. The introduction of otherworld technologies has brought an unpredictable evolutionary direction for the development of the world of Plants vs. Zombies. Get 3 offset points. Why are there so few? Ryan frowned. This technical exchange is likely to change the direction of the development of a 5th-level world. Only 3 points are offset, which is somewhat too small. Fortunately, as Ryan's strength increased, the system gave more information than the original. On the bulletin board, after reading it, Ryan knew that the rewards now given are only phased, just the world deviation caused by Dave, the luck son of that world. When you go to the world next time, you will calculate the offset point again for the changes that occurred in that world. Is actually a long-term task, but a long stream is also a good way. Now that Ryan has an offset of 25 points, next time you can find a world that may reap greater risks for adventure. In addition to the most important offset point, it also harvested a greenhouse farm, which made the planting base owned by Lane upgraded to a small planting base, farm, plus microbase, yard. It is just possible to plant the new plant this time without having to eradicate the original plant to make room for the new plant. The 2 rows of plants on the shelf behind the counter are a good example of this harvest. The rows below are very full, except for the original sunflower, pea shooter and sunshine mushroom. 7 common plants harvested this time were also placed. They are nut wall, burst pea shooter, cherry bomb, tombstone moss, lantern grass, piranha, water lily. Although they are the most basic plant varieties, but at least let Ryan have a plant army that can cope with most of the environment. In addition to these common varieties, there are 3 pots of advanced plants on the shelf above, including dragon grass, twin sunflowers and machine gun peas. Of these plants, ordinary plants still produce 10 per week, while advanced varieties can only produce 2 per week. On the cabinet on the side of the counter, in addition to the original Golden Book, Winter House Industrial Manual. Now there is another black book, Crazy Dave's Novice Plant Cultivation Guide. Looking at the 2 books, Ryan decided to study it. When he concentrated on the 2 books, he found that the 2 books needed different prices to learn quickly. Winter House Industry Manual thoroughly learned that 1 offset point is needed, because it is just an ordinary mechanical book with only a little science fiction, and the cost of learning is very small. The Crazy Dave's Novice Plant Cultivation Guide is a guide for the cultivation of extraordinary plants. To learn, you must have 5 offset points. Lean thought about it and finally decided to study the 2 books together. After all, mechanical knowledge is very useful in the face of many scenes and extraordinary plant cultivation methods. Think about the herbal medicine class in Hogwarts. You know that this is a knowledge directly linked to power. The accumulated offset points are not used to improve one's own strength, or the offset points are clasped in the hand, but the result is that some tragic consequences occur due to lack of power. It is not too late to regret it. Therefore, it is the most stupid idea to only save the offset point. Ryan sat on the only chair in the store, and then chose to instill knowledge. The offset points became 19 points. At this time, a light appeared in each of the 2 books, and then connected with Ryan's head. Ryan heard a lullaby begin to reverberate in his mind. In the lullaby, he slept slowly. Ryan, who was asleep, seemed to have a dream, dreaming that he was beside a lake, and from the colorful clouds in the sky, 2 streams of water were injected into the lake, making a pleasant sound of ding ding dong dong. Ryan felt half relaxed on the soft grass by the lake and looking up at the sky, very relaxed. One of the 2 streams ended quickly, but the other took a long time to completely end. As soon as the calm returned to the back, Ryan felt a suction on the top of his head, and then his eyes were dark. He woke up and found himself still sitting on the chair. How come there is no needle-like pain in the novel? Has the transmission not started yet? He was a little puzzled, but he thought in his mind that he soon realized that he had memorized the knowledge in those 2 books. You can fully master it by practicing it. Yes, no one has ever said that the transmission of knowledge must be obtained after the brain has been tortured. It seems that I have been worrying about it before. But this is also good, otherwise every time the knowledge is transmitted, it will be as painful as the killing of pigs on the ground. Rolling around the ground is not a good thing. After thinking about these things, Ryan began to carefully count the knowledge in his mind. Winter House Industrial Manual brought Ryan a wealth of mechanical knowledge, but he had repaired bicycles at most before, so he could not see any improvement in his mastery of machinery. But Crazy Dave's Novice Plant Cultivation Guide is different. In addition to understanding how the plants brought out of the Plant vs. Zombies should determine their status and how they need to be cultivated, they also learn from the herbal medicine lessons I learned at Hogwarts. Combine. Lane was surprised to find that he had integrated the knowledge of the herbal medicine class he had previously learned. It seems that this book helps him more than he thought. Reading www.yuukanzu.com. After roughly sorting out the data transmitted into the brain, he recalled the tension when the zombies swarmed, thinking in his mind, sure enough, the pay is proportional to the harvest. However, the harvest is far more than the previous adventures to other worlds. Let us not talk about the last harvested things. The experience gained by using magic combat can be said to be very precious. However, the crisis encountered this time was expected in advance, so the whole adventure process is also full of surprises. But after rippling the zombie attack, the zombie who was almost buried in the soil had a counter-killing experience. Also let Ryan know a risk point. When doing any action in the future, we must grasp the balance between safety and expected harvest, and do not pursue the ultimate harvest. Finally, the gold equivalent of 1,000 gallons is harvested, although not particularly large. But think about Harry Potter risking a quarter of the mortality rate in the True Wizard tournament, and busy with a full semester to earn this number. This gain can also be regarded as good. After summarizing the harvest of this adventure in his heart, think about nothing to deal with. Ryan stood up and looked around the store with satisfaction. After looking at the first shelf filled with plants for a few seconds, he chose to return. Lying back on the bed, Ryan found that the time was still only an hour later, which caused him somehow to feel the time confusion. After all, in the world of Plants vs. Zombies, he fought for a whole day. The first fight kept his spirit in a state of excitement. It also made Ryan a little insomnia, but when he thought of going to class as usual tomorrow, he forced himself to close his eyes. I don't know how long I turned in bed. Ryan finally fell asleep. Chapter 20, Transition and Discussion About 3 Dogs. Early the next morning, Ryan yawned and went to the auditorium for breakfast. I was too excited yesterday, so I didn't sleep well at night. However, despite his physical fatigue, Ryan was still very excited in spirit. He even smiled occasionally even at dinner. This behavior attracted the eyes of Hermione eating next to her. What did you do this weekend? After a while, I was confused and inexplicably dazed, and smirked from time to time. Are you really okay? Hermione let her go after Ryan repeatedly assured herself that there was no problem. After that, I went to the library to study myself. The days are back on track. Ryan is also quietly and normally in class. He feels that it is not suitable to travel to other worlds until he fully masters the two abilities of the current new learning. After all, if you want to learn new powers, you must first apply the powers you already master before you talk about it. In addition, he showed interest in magical plants in the herbal medicine class on Wednesday, even willing to stay and help clean up after class, just to stay with those magical plants for a while. After all, only by touching these plants, Ryan can absorb the knowledge of Crazy Dave and his own practice. Seeing that Ryan clearly showed his love for these plants, Professor Sprout was very happy. After all, as a teacher, the courses he taught had students' heartfelt likes that made them feel very accomplished. So Professor Sprout told Ryan that he can go directly to her office to ask questions when they have questions about these magical plants. So, besides improving his ability, Ryan found himself brushing his face with the professor. This is a surprise. However, the mechanical ability is difficult to practice, because there is a very unreasonable repair spell in the wizarding world, so that it is no place to practice hands. Fortunately, the thing does not have much effect in the wizarding world. When will there be a chance you can practice again? After writing homework in the evening, I found many people crowded by the fireplace in the common room. The Weasley twins seemed to be demonstrating new things there. Ryan just planned to stand up to see the excitement. The door of the common room opened, and Hermione crawled in from outside. She came in and looked around the lounge, then walked towards Ryan. It seemed that there was something to find him. Lean returned to his seat again, and soon Hermione sat opposite him, then looked around a little nervously. Most people in the lounge were attracted by the new tricks of Weasley twins, and no one noticed this corner. Hermione put down her school bag and pulled out a thick book from inside. This book looks old, with a reptile skin on it. The name of the book is written in faded lacquer on the cover. Rare Europa Magic Animal. Hermione said, "Look, I found this." She opened the book and turned to one of the pages. A three-headed dog was painted on it. It seems that the original author's painter was good. The three-headed dog was drawn to life and kept changing its posture as if it were alive. Lane saw at a glance that the three-headed dog on the picture was almost the same as the three-headed dog they met in the room on the 4th floor. That day they were not allowed to be close. The description of this animal is written at the bottom of the picture. Three-headed dog, a magical creature with regional biological ancestry. It is a relic of the age of mythology. Because of its 3 heads, it has inherent advantages in the ability to detect, resist coma, panic, and coma. This animal has powerful night vision, and its paws and teeth are poisonous. It can cause difficult healing for its opponents. Multiple heads can take turns to rest, so it is difficult to attack it. The lineage of mythical creatures makes him extremely resistant to magic and physical attacks. "Why do you show me this?" Ryan asked, and then he seemed to think of something. "I swear I will never be as adventurous as last time." After all, this terrible creature can still withdraw from the whole body. "Fortunately, we can't expect to be able to look after me forever. And I accidentally involved you last time. I apologize to you again. It's a good thing for you to have this kind of thinking, but I don't mean to show you this book. You look at this paragraph." Ryan followed Hermione's finger and found a row under the footer that he just shipped. Small print: "The three-headed dog can be tamed by the powerful owner. Once tamed, it only follows the owner's instructions, and is the most suitable and loyal guard." We were in that room that day and saw a trapdoor at the foot of the three-headed dog, which just shows that the three-headed dog is there to protect something. "What do you think is what will make the school take a certain risk? Such a dangerous animal in the school?" When did Hermione have this curiosity? In the original text, she wasn't making friends with Harry and Ron. "Are you concerned about this issue?" Lean thought about Hermione's changes, and then figured it out. As a school bully, Hermione must have great curiosity about the unknown. Not to mention escaping from the mouth of such a big three-headed dog. It would be a strange thing not to be curious about that animal. If it weren't for Ryan who already knew the answer, he must be looking for information about the dog. It's just that in the original world, Hermione was not very popular in Gryffindor. You reading www.uukanzu.com could not find someone to discuss, so at most think about it in your heart. Hermione saw that Ryan seemed to be dazed again, so she asked, "I don't believe you have any curiosity about the three-headed dog and trapdoor. Tell me, what did you think of?" Lane knew the secret under the trapdoor, but he couldn't say it straight. "Otherwise I can't explain it." After thinking about it, Ryan said, "After reading the information you gave today, the only thing I can be sure of is what a dog is guarding, and that thing must be very important, otherwise it will not be used to look at the door with this animal." However, Ryan turned his words, "I find it strange that Hogwarts is just a school, not a vault. How could it be used to store babies?" "Wait, vault, I seem to have thought of something." Hermione continued, "I have been ordering the Prophet daily. I remember the newspaper saying that someone had invaded Gilling Pavilion during the summer vacation, but a Gilling Pavilion spokesman said, the invaded vault is empty, and the contents have been extracted earlier in the day. Do you say that the things hidden in Hogwarts are the ones that were taken away?" A good reasoning, and he could actually guess the truth. Ryan looked at Hermione in surprise, then found that she was a little sick, coughed and said, "I think you guessed it very well, because the wizarding world can be better than Gillinch. The only safe place is Hogwarts, where the great Dumbledore is. but those who dare to rob Gilink may dare to come to Hogwarts to rob. So, what should I do? Hermione said nervously. Leon waved his hand and said with a smile. Don't worry, we have the greatest white wizard of this century as the principal. Even if there is any situation, it is not our 2 first-year students to worry about it. Chapter 21, Visit Quidditch Training. After comforting Hermione, the two read the book for a while, and then said goodnight to each other and went back to their bedrooms to sleep. When he had breakfast the next morning, Hermione was sitting next to Lane and gossiping about it for a while. It's either extremely precious or dangerous. Hermione said the results of her analysis in bed last night, or both are occupied. Ryan swallowed the oatmeal in his mouth. Still bacon not used to breakfast. Why do British people eat so greasy in the morning? However, without other information, and even without knowing the size of the thing, this guess is obviously futile. In the next few days, Ryan regained the normal daytime class mode. For the rest of the time, he or she would read books in the library with Hermione, either complete the homework in the common room with the students. It was just that the excitement of the last night tour was too great, so he gave up the plans for the next few night tours. In several walks, Lane secretly poured the acid secreted by the tombstone moss into a corner of the outer wall of Hogwarts Castle. He found that the acid that would quickly corrode a door-sized marble had no effect on the Hogwarts stone wall. In the previous life, it was possible that the news that every inch of Hogwarts land was encased with strong protective magic may be true. It seems that Hogwarts Castle itself is much deeper than the water in the novel. Therefore, everything is still the highest priority. Until the time came to the next Wednesday, Ryan decided to go out of the castle. In the Scottish Highlands where Hogwarts is located, it is almost impossible to see the sun as it approaches winter, and it often rains. Even if the house elves burned the fireplace very well, he still felt that mushrooms were growing on him when he squatted in the castle all day to study. So even after dinner, the sun has gone down. Ryan decided to go out of the castle to breathe the fresh air while his homework had been completed. After inviting Hermione to go out together failed, I still have a bunch of materials for the metamorphosis class to check, and also have an astronomy class at night. And after gaining a look despised from Zen Xwibber, Ryan can only shrug and choose one go out of the castle. Because it was Wednesday afternoon, he decided to go to the stadium to see the training of the college's Quidditch team. After all, he has been in the magic world for so long. He has never seen how to play the most popular sports in the magic world. When he came to the course, he found that the course was a huge building made of wood and colorful cloth. There were 3 gold poles at each end of the course, with a ring on top, like little plastic sticks for children to blow soap bubbles, but they are each 50 feet tall. Hundreds of chairs were placed high in the stands of a circle, and there were scattered students sitting there. Looking at the stands, Ryan saw Ron's red hair at a glance. Just get acquaintances. Ryan climbed up to the stands and sat next to Ron. Hey, how did you come out today? Ron asked a bit strangely. Because Ryan organized everyone to discuss homework together in the common room. The popularity is not bad, and the relationship with Ron is okay. Always come out and walk around, Ryan replied, and then he looked at the players flying around the court and asked Ron, I don't know Quidditch at all. Can you tell me say? Ron looked a little excited, because he was always ignored. After all, he was the youngest son in the family, but there was a sister underneath, and the school was covered by the halo of Harry Potter's savior. Therefore, I hope that others will recognize him. Quidditch is the most popular sport in the wizarding world. Ron cleared his throat and began to say, the rules of the Quidditch ball are easy to understand, although it is not easy to play. 7 people on each side, 3 of them are called for the chaser. Finally, Ron pointed to the players who were fighting for a bright red ball the size of a football on the court and said, look, they are chasers, and the ball in their hands is a ghost fly. Then he pointed to the golden circles on the field and said to Ryan, the chasers pass each other the flying balls, trying to pass them through any of the 3 rings below, so that they can score. Every time the flying pass a circle can get 10 points. Of course, each team also has a goalkeeper, preventing the opponent's chaser from throwing the ghost ball into his goal. The goalkeeper in our courtyard is Captain Wood. 3 chaser, 1 goalkeeper. What about the others? Look, there are 2 that can fly in the air. Lane saw 2 black slightly smaller than the basketball flying in the air, trying to hit everyone on the broom. But the Weasley brothers took a bat similar to a baseball bat and continually hit the ball elsewhere. As for how to see the Weasley twins, red hair is particularly conspicuous. These 2 are roaming balls. They flew around and wanted to knock the golfers off the broom. Ron lowered his chest proudly, but my twin brother is the best hitter. They will protect our team members from being hit by roaming balls. At the same time, hit the roaming ball towards the opponent team members. Lane listened to the loud sound of the bat when he hit the roaming ball, and asked with some worry, is this thing really going to kill people? Ron scratched his head, at least not at Hogwarts. The worst thing is to smash the chin. It sounds dangerous, Lane thought silently. Finally, it's time to find the golfer. There will be a golden ball with wings smaller than the Neville memory ball in the official game is called the Golden Snitch. It flies very fast. The job of the golfer is to shuttle back and forth between the chaser, the batter, the roaming ball and the ghost ball. and catch it before the opponent finds the golfer. If the Team-S golfer catches the Gold Spister, his team can win an extra 150 points, which is almost a stable win. Watching the players on the field fly around, Ryan feels that this sport looks at least more exciting than basketball or football, and there is not much entertainment in the wizarding world. No wonder Quidditch will become popular in the entire wizarding world. The index ranks first in sports. Seeing Ryan seemed interested in Quidditch, Ron, holding the joy of Amway's success, began to continually introduce Ryan to the history of the players on the court, with the famous Quidditch team and this sport interspersed in the middle. History story. It seems that Ron is also a level person, except that his luster has always been obscured by those around him. Suddenly Ryan saw a thin figure flying across the field on a broom at high speed. Is that Harry Potter? Ron looked at the direction of Ryan's finger. Yeah, he is the new-looking player. You can tell others about this news. This year he is our team's secret weapon. I think other teams may already know. Because I was in the toilet yesterday after class, I heard two Hufflepuffs discussing Harry. What should I do? Ron looked nervous. It's okay, I listened to their discussion as if I didn't believe that Harry could fly at all, Lane said with a smile. The time passed slowly during the conversation, and the last day was completely dark. Ryan and Ron waited for Harry to change his clothes and went back to the dormitory to get the textbook and went to the astronomy tower for astronomy class. Chapter 22, Halloween Eve. During these days, Ryan kept busy learning various knowledge in order to strengthen his strength. What delighted him most was that he found the correct use of the knowledge in the Winterhouse Industry Manual. As industrial knowledge, this book records quite a lot of various materials, and these contents are obviously able to provide a lot of help for Ryan in the transformation course. As we all know, the three elements of transfiguration are magic power, the understanding of magic itself, and the mastery of various material properties, and this knowledge about various materials can strengthen Ryan's grasp of various material properties. This also allowed Ryan to add a lot of points to Gryffindor in the Transfiguration class. Perhaps because it is too busy now. In addition to the homework of each subject, you also have to take time to practice the new knowledge gained from the Wanji grocery store. So, when Ryan suddenly realized that he wrote a letter every Saturday and had written the 9th letter to his family, he felt incredible. One morning, Ryan smelled the smell of roasted pumpkin in the castle. He knew it was Halloween. Does the monster seem to be out of the cage? Please pay attention. In the last few days, while desperately thinking about how to deal with the possible monster event, Lane walked to the curse classroom with the textbook. Today Professor Flitwick looks very happy. Probably because it is about to celebrate the festival. The festival atmosphere is getting stronger and stronger. After class, the professor announced that he thought they could start flying objects. The students have been looking forward to try this skill since they saw Professor Flitwick flying Neville's toads around the classroom. Flitwick divided the whole class into two groups to start training. Harry's partner is Simo Finnegan. Ron wants to work with Hermione Granger. Harry, you look happier. Because Neville has always hoped to change with Simone. So Ryan stared at Harry a little depressed now. After all, no one likes his partner is a person who is easy to cause various accidents. While Ron and Hermione Granger both looked annoyed, Hermione had not spoken to both of them since the day Harry's broom was delivered. I have to say that at most I couldn't get used to each other, but I usually nodded when I met them. And now both sides basically treat each other as air and completely ignore each other. This situation also made Ryan and Hermione feel embarrassed when they met Harry or Ron when they returned to the common room after studying in the library. Okay, don't forget the delicate wrist movements we have been training. Professor Flitwick stood on his pile of books as usual, screaming. Shake it, remember, shake it. It's also important to read the incantation. Don't forget Wizard Barufio, he said after us and found himself lying the floor. On the chest stands a bison. Magic cannot change food, but it can change bison. Couldn't the wizard make bison first and then make bison into roast beef? It seems that after the class, I asked Professor Flitwick. Ryan thought about taking out his wand and preparing to start practicing. Because I practiced in private for a long time, Ryan let this feather fly in one go. Oh, look, Mr. Lane has succeeded. By the way, for the nice floating spell you took in your last flight class, I'm going to give Gryffindor 5 points. Professor Flitwick shouted sharply. In the time after, Ryan began to help Neville master the spell. In fact, as long as you don't panic and add a little confidence, Neville's magic level is not so bad. After reciting the mantra repeatedly and watching Ryan's demonstration empty-handed practice many times, Neville released the curse. Although it only allowed the feathers to be less than 1 finger away from the table. Under the premise of no correct learning method, most of the little wizards are still struggling in magic learning. Harry and Simone fluttered, and did it again and again, but the feathers that should be sent by them in the air were still lying on the table motionless. Finally, the anxious Simo poked the feather with his wand, and the feather screamed directly. Fortunately, Harry's eyes quickly extinguished the small fire, but it also forced the students around to wave the wind to expel the burning smell of the feathers. On the other side of the classroom, Ron's progress is not bad. Wingardium Leviosa, he shouted loudly, waving his 2 long arms like a windmill. You're wrong, Ryan heard Hermione bluntly saying, It's Uchidim Leviosa, and the word ga should be long and clear. Hermione, before seeing that Ryan knows the spell, so I went to practice with Ryan in advance. Hermione had mastered the spell before the class. Since you're so clever, you come and try it, Ron growled. Hermione rolled up her sleeves and waved her wand, saying, Uchidim Leviosa. Their feather rose from the table and floated 4 feet above their heads. Oh, well done, Professor Flitwick shouted with his hand pinched. Look, everyone, Miss Granger has succeeded. This curse is not as difficult as you think. Be careful, you can too. After class, Ryan ran to the podium to ask questions about the bison. Professor Flitwick replied. The wizard Barufio did not make a bison out of thin air, he just summoned a bison from somewhere else. Gambler's law of transformation just said that food cannot be made out of thin air, but you can summon food that already exists elsewhere. After thanking Professor Flitwick for his doubts, Ryan ran out of the classroom door. The corridor is very crowded, the students in the class are blocked, and everyone can only move forward slowly. Lane heard Ron's voice in front of her. No wonder everyone can't stand her. To be honest, she is like a nightmare. As soon as the words fell, Ryan saw a brown-haired girl walking down Ron and Harry holding her book and bumped into Harry. The girl should be Hermione, but she looked down as if crying. Ryan squeezed beside Harry and Ron, and heard Ron say to Harry, she must have noticed that, except for Ryan who came with her, she has no new friends. Lean shook his head, then patted the shoulders of the two. How come you suddenly popped out and scared me? Ron said. I think you are arranging a girl behind your back. It really lacks the spirit of gentleman. Ryan said. Harry looked down, looking a little ashamed. Ron asked instead, what is the spirit of a gentleman? Only then did Ryan think that magic has leveled the gap between men and women. So in the United Kingdom, the wizarding world is instead the place where gender is the most equal, which also leads to many common British customs not in the wizarding world, such as the gentleman spirit. Well, what I want to say is that the behind-the-scenes guys are always immoral, and I think you need to apologize to Hermione. Harry and Ron nodded. Ryan heard Ron muttering, you can apologize in your face. I'm really curious that you can tolerate a friend like Hermione. After that, the three went to the next class together. Chapter 23, Halloween Boss, Monster. In class, Ryan was surprised to find that Hermione, a standard student, did not come to class. This made Ryan a little nervous, thinking about the monster, definitely not a first-year student. Fortunately, it may be because the class, the Chilo-Voldemort complex cannot pull away, and there is no way to release the monster. There is a quiet and peaceful atmosphere in the castle. Ryan asked her classmates in the common room about Hermione's whereabouts. Patil, a witch of the same grade of Indian descent, told Ryan that she saw Hermione crying sadly in the women's toilet and did not let others comfort her. After thanking Petya, Lane ran downstairs, past the hall decorated with colorful Halloween decorations, and went straight to the public toilet on the first floor. At the door of the bathroom, Ryan stopped Angelina when she saw Angelina coming out of it. Good afternoon, Sister Angelina. Do you see Hermione inside? Hermione? That's the first-year girl in our college? Angelina nodded. She cried with the door locked in a cubicle. Some of us tried to comfort her, but they were rejected by her. Are you her friend? I think so. Could you please call her out for me? Just tell her that Ryan is waiting for him at the door. Okay. Angelina smiled and turned and walked into the bathroom. After a few minutes, Angelina took Hermione out. Hermione's hair was a little messy, her eyes were red, and she sniffed her nose from time to time. Friends are one of everyone's most important treasures, and I wish you a pleasant chat. Sister Angelina waved to them and left. After seeing an acquaintance, Hermione's tears began to circulate in her eyes again. Ryan quickly took out a napkin and handed it to Hermione. It's okay, don't cry. Let's find a place to talk, so it's not appropriate to stand in the corridor. After that, she took Hermione to the nearest empty classroom. After all, although there are not many people at the entrance of the bathroom, there are always people coming and going, and it is always bad to be seen here and cry here. Turning a corner is an empty classroom, and Ryan opens the door to let Hermione advance. Then I went in and found 2 chairs. After wiping the napkin clean, the 2 people sat down face to face, went clean the curse. After that, Ryan looked at Hermione with swollen eyes, not knowing what to say. After all, he has been a single mother-to-be dog in his entire life, and he has not had much experience coaxing girls. So the 2 people stared at each other for a minute or two. Maybe they found Ryan's embarrassment. Hermione's mouth twitched upward and she laughed. This smile, the dignified atmosphere was also broken, and Ryan smiled inexplicably. After a few minutes, the 2 stopped and smiled. Ryan finally sorted out his thoughts, and he said to Hermione, you don't have to feel so sad because it's not your own mistake. Weasley and Potter essentially don't want to take the initiative to hurt others, but sometimes they get emotional and nothing goes through the brain. For example, what I said today hurt people. I believe they should not have said it intentionally. So what did I do wrong, and they repelled me so much? Hermione wiped tears from the corners of her eyes with a napkin and raised her head a little stubbornly. I spoke actively in every class and tried my best to add points to the college, but they didn't value my efforts at all and easily deducted the added points. Lion's hands pressed down, Hermione, don't be excited. To be honest, the place where they deduct the most points is in Professor Snape's class. Sometimes it's just that the professor is biased, and it's not entirely their fault. You ignore the points deducted by Professor Snape. You will find that their deductions are the average of the whole school. Then why Gryffindor classmates don't seem to value the college cup so much? Hermione said, a little confused. A lot of students in this college will deduct some points for discipline or academics. I find that they will point out if they are wrong, but they don't care about these at all, and even hate me because I say they. Hermione shook her head gently, and then went on to say, the branch hat wants to divide me to Ravenclaw, but I think that the greatest white wizard of the century, Dumbledore's principal, graduated from Gryffindor and chose here it is. Now think about whether I am not suitable for this college. No, of course not. Ryan's habit of comforting her little niece in her previous life, trying to reach out and touch Hermione's head, she was glared back with her eyes. Actually, the branch cap is a school that is divided according to the personality of the student, after taking into account the wishes of the student himself. If you are assigned to Gryffindor, you must have a suitable side for this college. Students who have been assigned to Gryffindor, the branch cap is brave. In fact, I think it is accurate to be emotionally easy. Harry and Ron are the typical ones, so I say you don't want to angry at their remarks. Sometimes they are really overthinking. In fact, you are right. Since what I said is right, then why do I think everyone in the academy repels me a little bit? Hermione asked strangely. It's very simple. What you said is correct, but your expression is a bit problematic. Ryan said everything she had thought about when she read the novel in her life. As far as I know, you haven't been very good at communicating with people since elementary school. So often you are kind enough to help others, but in the eyes of others it is a kind of condescending instruction. I heard of you in elementary school, but it is often prefixed with arrogance. If you listen to Ravenclaw, they will think about it in private and know your true purpose. But you can't expect Gryffindor with habitual blood to think so much. Whether it's Harry Potter or Ron, they are essentially good people, but Harry suddenly changed from a helpless orphan to a savior. This psychological gap is likely to amplify his emotional side. And Leo, oh well. He has too many brothers, and he is the least valued in the family. It is understandable that he has some extreme things in this environment. So, the evaluation from the mouth of an extreme person and an emotional person when they are emotional is not necessarily correct. You don't need to keep them in mind. After an afternoon of persuasion, Hermione was finally relieved. She knew she should not torture herself with other people's mistakes, and she also knew what she needed to change in the future. The sky slowly darkened, and Hermione adjusted her mind and stood up. She reached out a hand. Thank you for spending an afternoon comforting me. I think you are my first friend at Hogwarts, right? Sure enough, I was just an acquaintance before. Ryan stood up and held out Hermione's hand. Yes, we are friends. Chapter 24, Halloween Boss. In the Monster. After persuading Hermione, Ryan suggested going to the library to study together. But Hermione thought she was red and swollen. At first glance, the image she just cried was really not suitable for being ugly in front of her classmates. She thought it was good to study in this empty classroom with no one. No way. Ryan went upstairs back to the dormitory to pick up her school bag, and then returned to this empty classroom. Hermione had washed her face and cleaned up the two desks. Hermione took out the notes that Ryan had copied from the class she missed in the morning and began to make up for the class she didn't take in the morning. While copying, he said to himself, God, I can't believe I missed a class because of this matter. The floating mantra is a very important mantra, saying that I will take the final exam at irregular intervals. The time passed slowly during the study. After writing all the homework assignments today, Ryan looked up outside the window and found that it was getting dark. Bad. I think now the time for dinner is over. Today there is a Halloween dinner. I heard that the Hogwarts Halloween party will be rich and the decoration in the auditorium will be beautiful. Plus this is ours in Hogwarts' first holiday banquet. I think it must not be missed. Let us run faster. Maybe we can catch up with the banquet. The two men packed up their books and were about to push the door out. Suddenly they heard crackling footsteps on the other side of the corridor. Ryan seemed to think of something, grabbed Hermione who was about to open the door, and then opened a door to peep out. When he saw Harry and Ron running, Ryan pushed open the door and went out. After class in the morning, Harry and Ron found that Hermione hadn't appeared all afternoon, and Ryan just disappeared after going upstairs to get a school bag. At dinner time, they went downstairs to the restaurant and went to the Halloween party. They accidentally heard Petia say to her friend Lavender that Hermione was doing homework with Lane in an empty classroom on the first floor, although her eyes were still a bit red and swollen but not crying in the toilet like noon. I envy Hermione for having such a friend. Ron heard this and seemed a little uncomfortable. He said to Harry, because Ryan is also a bit nerdy, so you can be friends with Hermione. Harry said, I know that because Ryan asked you to apologize to Hermione at noon, it makes you a little uncomfortable. But if he didn't organize everyone to discuss the assignment in the common room, I might not be able to finish the assignment recently. You know Quidditch training takes time. A moment later, when they walked into the restaurant and saw the colorful Halloween decorations, They immediately forgot Hermione. Thousands of bats fluttered vigorously on the walls and ceiling, and another thousand like a low dark cloud hovering around the dining table, making the candles in the pumpkin belly flutter. The delicious food suddenly appeared on the golden plate, just like the banquet at the school. While Harry was eating happily, Professor Quirrell suddenly rushed into the restaurant, his big scarf crooked on his head, his face full of fright. Everyone stared at him and saw him walking to Professor Dumbledore's chair, leaning on the table and leaning against the table, panting and saying, "The monster in the underground classroom thought you should know." Finished. He planted his head on the floor and passed out. The restaurant suddenly became a mess. Professor Dumbledore had to make a few harsh fireworks explode on the head of his wand before everyone was quiet. "Senior Commander," he said in a low voice, "immediately lead the students of your college to the dormitory." Percy naturally took the students of our school to the Gryffindor Tower. On the way, they met some people who hurried to different directions. Many people said nervous on their faces, and even some timid girls sobbed in a low voice. As they walked for a while, after struggling to squeeze through a bunch of students at the Hufflepuff College with confused expressions, Harry seemed to think of something, grabbing Ron's arm and saying, "I think Hermione and Ryan don't know yet. Strange thing, I think we are going to inform them." Ron bit his lip. "Oh, okay," he said decisively, "but it's better not to let Percy see us." They buried themselves, mixed with the crowd of Hufflepuff, and walked in the other direction. They walked through the empty side corridor and just turned the corner. They heard the rapid footsteps behind them. "Percy," Ron said in a low voice, dragging Harry to hide behind a large Sphinx eagle beast. They looked over from behind the stone carvings and found that it was not Percy but Snape. He walked through the corridor and disappeared from their sight. "What is he doing?" Harry asked in a low voice. "Why didn't he stay with the other teachers in the underground classroom below?" "How could I know?" They followed Snape's footsteps as they walked away, quietly walking along another corridor, trying not to make a sound. The rest of the road did not encounter any problems. Harry had just turned a corner to the road in front of the classroom where they studied. "I saw Ryan coming out of the back door of the classroom. It's dinner time now." "You reading www.uukanzu.com. What are you two doing here?" Harry opened his mouth, just what to say. Suddenly there was a smell of smelly socks and public toilets that had never been cleaned, and then 4 people heard a low grunt and the sound of huge feet dragging on the ground. Len's complexion changed, and immediately greeted Harry and Ron to hide in the classroom, and then they held their breath and hid in the shadow of the classroom. Through the glass on the door of the classroom, they saw a behemoth walked outside the classroom, by the moonlight shining through the corridor window. They found this to be a monster. It is 12 feet tall, with dull skin, grey like granite, and a large and stupid body like a huge pile of mud, with a small cocoa head on top. Its short legs are as thick as stumps, and underneath are flat, thick, cocooning feet. The smell from it was disgusting. It was holding a thick wooden stick in his hand. The stick was dragging on the ground because of its long arm. Hermione covered her mouth and gave a dejected cry of exclamation. After listening to the footsteps of the monster and walking away slowly, the 4 came to the door and looked towards the corridor. They saw the giant monster standing by a door and peering inside. It swayed its long ears, made a decision with its small head, then dropped his head and slowly entered the room. "The key is in the keyhole," Harry whispered. "We can lock it inside to avoid hurting people." "Good idea," Ron said nervously. They walked sideways to the open door, felt their mouths were dry, and they only hoped that the monster would not run out suddenly. Harry strode, grabbed the key in his hand, and slammed into the door, locking it securely. "It's done." Chapter 25, Halloween Boss, Under the Monster. Just as Harry succeeded, they flushed with excitement and began to run back along the passageway, and suddenly heard a bang. Harry turned his head and saw that the door that had just been locked was directly opened by a stick. A piece of debris on the door flew directly at Harry. Harry felt that he couldn't hide from closing his eyes and waiting to be smashed. Suddenly, he was lying on the ground with a strong pull, and the debris flew directly over Harry's head. It turned out that Ryan followed, and when he saw the danger, he pulled Harry. Sure enough, the monster still has a certain intelligence. If there is no one in the toilet, it will give priority to attacking the person closest to it, such as the 2 people who just locked it in the toilet. Ryan looked at the status quo and thought secretly, "The toilet door can't stop the monster." Ryan shouted at Harry, "You just locked the door so much that it alarmed the monster. We must now find a way to trap it in the toilet. Otherwise in this place we can't run away from the monster." Ryan fired a shot at the monster, the aggressive curse language just learned. Hot and hot. Unfortunately, this spell had no effect. The monster just blocked it with his arm, and then tried to squeeze through the small door and go out. At this time, Ron and Harry also reacted, and they also released spells to the monsters. Grin Hula, Tarantella Dance. The 2 spells hit the monster. The monster just paused for a while. Afterwards, he still violently hit the door frame with a stick in his hand and tried to rush out. It seems true that the monster written on the book has strong magic resistance. Here Hermione also adjusted her mind. She used a floating charm to direct the faucet in the toilet that was just hit by the monster. Let the faucet collide with the toilet floor and make a huge noise. The IQ of the monster is very low, so he ignored the 4 living people in front of him and turned his head to check the direction of the noise. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the 4 people crept back, trying to get out of the attack range of the monster. Just over 20 meters away, a huge roar came from the toilet. It seems that the monster has found himself deceived, and the little things that just provoked themselves have escaped. Heard Ryan yelled, "Run!" The 4 people ran in the corridor. The angry monster pushed the walls on both sides of the toilet door and squeezed it out, chasing towards the backs of 4 people. The edge of the damaged wall was sharp and penetrated the skin on the palm of the monster. The smelly blood was left in the hands of the monster, leaving a red and black trace on the corridor. "What shall we do now?" Ron asked nervously when he found the monster getting closer and closer. "Turn around for a few laps to find a place where giant monsters can't get through." "We can't run to the auditorium, maybe there are other classmates. We can't bring the monsters behind," Lane replied. Turned a corner. They saw a closed door. The door is small. It is an old-style wooden door covered with iron. It is only more than 1 meter wide and 2 meters high, and it looks like a good place to hide. After Kazakhstan used the unlocking spell, they found that the space inside was not small, as if it were a warehouse with a series of debris such as old iron buckets with broken brooms. 4 people squeezed in, then closed the door, and then retreated to the depths of the room. Soon, they heard the heavy footsteps of the troll stopped outside the door, and then the disgusting noise of the troll came from the door. "Will it find us?" Hermione asked, as Ryan listened to her talking with teeth trembling. "Maybe, but it can't enter at such a small door." Lane comforted Hermione. The voice just fell, and the door was smashed with a bang. The monster tried to squeeze in, but the size of the door only allowed it to reach into a head or an arm. The monster tried to reapply the old trick, but this time the wall pattern didn't move. The maniac monster can only use his hand to wave the stick and smash the nearby debris into the sky, occasionally leaning his head in and looking for 4 people with bloodshot eyes. But it didn't hurt the 4 people hiding behind several shelves. Lane looked at the giant monster who peeked in from time to time, and then looked at the environment of the clutter. Suddenly had a bold idea. "Can you break the hanging ring of the iron chandelier above?" Ryan asked. "The 3 of us should be fine," Harry answered. "Well, you are ready. I count 123, you attack the ring together, and then I have a way to deal with the monster." "Ready." ×3. 1 2 3 hands on. Uchidim Leviosa. Harry's magic interrupted the hanging ring of the chandelier, but the chandelier was hung in the air by Ryan's spell. Lin slowly moved the chandelier toward the door with magic, and then finished the magic at the moment when the monster looked into it. The angled iron chandelier hit the monster's head from the height of 5 or 6 meters with the sound of the wind, and shot the monster's head directly on the ground, making a terrifying sound. One corner of the chandelier hit the back of the monster, and a big mouth was opened in that place, and some red and white liquid flowed out. The monster's neck also formed a strange angle with the base, which seemed to be broken. Then the body of the monster fell down and blocked the door of the room. "It's done. It's okay now," Ryan finished, and all 4 of them slid against the wall and sat on the ground and gasped. They found out because of the tension and fear just now. Now the legs are soft. After sitting quietly in the dark for a few minutes, Hermione shuddered and asked, "This monster, is it dead?" "Maybe," Lane said. "I don't think this monster looks alive." Suddenly there was a violent knock on the door and loud footsteps, and all 4 people in the room looked up. They didn't realize how much noise they had just made. The people downstairs must have heard the violent collision and the roar of the monster. A moment later, Professor Flitwick magically removed the troll that blocked the door. Professor McGonagall lit the wand in his hand and rushed into the room, followed by Snape, with Chillo at the end. Killua only glanced at the monster, then let out a sobbing of weakness, sitting on a box, clutching his chest tightly. Snape bent over to check the monster. Professor McGonagall looked at 4 people. Ryan had never seen her look so angry. At this moment Professor Snape stood up, revealing an unexpected expression. "The monster is dead. Is it a floating spell?" "Yes." Ryan only then clearly saw the brain splattered by the monster through the light. A disgustant feeling came to his mind, and he answered ugly. "You killed a monster." "This is a difficult thing for an adult wizard. For several of your first-year students, I would like to praise your courage and the release of the spell. But, here before, I needed you to find the Principal Dumbledore together with me. After all, this incident caused the death of a magical creature, and the 4 students almost died. The principal must personally ask about this matter." Finally, Professor McGonagall seriously supported Hermione, whose legs were shaking, leading the way. Ryan followed the 3 of them and walked to the office of Principal Dumbledore.